Good evening and welcome to the council meeting for Tuesday, April the 29th, 2025. Please rise for the playing of the national anthem and a moment of reflection.
Oh, Canada.
Please be seated. At this time, I'll look to Councillor McPherson to read the land acknowledgement.
The land on which council meets today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabeg, and Attawandarunk, and the Mississaugas of the First Credit Nation peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many Indigenous peoples made up of First Nation, Inuit, and Métis. The Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement should remind us of our responsibility to ensure the Dish, the territories on which we live and work, is never emptied, and that we take care of the land and its inhabitants in a way that ensures its future sustainability.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson. So at this time, we're going to start our meeting a little bit differently. I'm going to look to the city clerk now, and she is going to administer the oath of office to our newest councillor, Councillor Marty Mako.
So good evening, Marty. It is my honor to provide you with a declaration of office this evening. If you could please repeat back to me. I, insert your name.
I, Marty Mako.
Having been elected to the office of councillor.
Having been elected to the office of councillor.
In the municipality of the city of St. Catharines.
In the municipality of the city of St. Catharines.
Do solemnly promise and declare.
Do solemnly promise and declare.
I will truly, faithfully, and impartially.
I will truly, faithfully, and impartially.
Exercise this office.
Exercise this office.
To the best of my knowledge and ability.
To the best of my knowledge and ability.
I have not received and will not receive.
I have not received and will not receive.
Any payment or reward.
Any payment or reward.
Or promise thereof.
Or promise thereof.
For the exercise of this office.
For the exercise of this office.
In a biased or corrupt.
In a biased or corrupt.
Or in any improper manner.
Or in any improper manner.
I will disclose any pecuniary interest.
I will disclose any pecuniary interest.
Direct or indirect.
Direct or indirect.
In accordance with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act.
In accordance with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act.
I will be faithful.
I will be faithful.
And bear true allegiance.
And bear true allegiance.
To His Majesty King Charles III.
To His Majesty King Charles III.
And I make this solemn promise and declaration.
And I make this solemn promise and declaration.
Conscientiously believing it to be true.
Conscientiously believing it to be true.
And knowing that it is.
And knowing that it is.
Of the same force and effect.
Of the same force and effect.
as if made under oath.
as if made under oath.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
Let's grab a photo. We're going to do 2 photos.
Okay.
One's going to be more special than the other. All right, so first one.
Okay.
Okay, just wait.
Okay. Oh my.
All right, let's try it again.
Earned.
Perfect.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
He can keep it for the rest. Let's be completely honest. If Marty and I jumped into the ring to fight over that belt, he's walking out with the belt. I don't think there's any question about that. Oh, wow. Is this going to be the one meeting I do with my chains of office on? All right. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight. This is a special occasion, and I want to welcome Councillor Marty Mako to the Horseshoe. I think we're all excited to have you here. I think, obviously, it's been a difficult couple of months, but I think we're all glad that Port Dalhousie has the representation again. And I think we all believe you will do an excellent job of taking the place, well, not taking the place, but filling the seat of Carlos Garcia. Carlos was a friend to many of us. He was an incredible advocate for the community, Marty, and I think you are a worthy successor to that title. So I want to welcome you on behalf of council. I'm glad to see you here, and I look forward to you adding your voice to the collective wisdom of this council as we try to make the best decisions possible for the city of St. Catharines. So if you want to take a moment to say anything, I'm going to just, do you know how to use the system? Press the button, and just give me a second. All right, it's yours.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, fellow councilors, city staff, members of the community, my wife and 2 daughters who even came out tonight for the special occasion. I'm just really full of just gratitude for everyone who supported me along the way. And for those of you who might not know the story, it started back in 2010 when I ran for the first time, and I lost by just over 20 votes. I've held on to this dream for a long time. And perseverance, I think, is an important quality I want my kids to see, too. You don't always achieve your dreams right away. And sometimes it takes time, and sometimes it takes hard work to get there. But I never lost hope. And I kept trying. I had faith in Carlos that he was the right councillor for Port Dalhousie for many years, and he was. He was such an effective rep. And I did want to acknowledge the reason that I am here is because he is not. And I'm still always thinking of Carlos, and I will from today on as well. But I will chart my own path. I'm my own person, and moving forward too, I'll try my best to represent the residents of Port Dalhousie Ward and the city the best of my abilities. And just want to say, never give up on your dreams, just because of how long it will take to achieve them. The time will pass anyway. So work hard at things that you love, things that make you passionate, and I think that's what helps us to make our city a greater place. So I'm just really thankful and gracious to everyone for being so welcoming. The city staff orientation has been fantastic. They've been helping to set me up for success tonight. I apologize if I pushed the wrong button on occasion or maybe raised my hand when I shouldn't. I'm still learning the ropes in terms of process, but just know I'm going to put my whole heart into this. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Marty, and welcome. On to the mayor's report, and I took the chains of office off. Dave forgot to pay the air conditioning bill this month, so it's pretty hot in here, and I don't know if I can get through it with the chains on as well. So I'll get into the mayor's report. It's not overly long today. I want to start, though, with condolences. Residents may notice flags at city facilities have been flying at half-mast in memory of retired and current city employees who have passed away recently. Edward Sauer, a former St. Catharines employee with 30 years of service, passed away on March 1st. And this past weekend, city employee Lance Levy passed away. Lance worked for the city for 26 years, first hired as a utilities worker, followed by a brief role as a parks operator, before transferring to become an underground services operator, a position he held for the last 20 years. And we want to offer condolences to the family, friends, and co-workers of both Edward and Lance. I also want to express our condolences on the passing of Alex Bradnam, the vice chair of the DSBN Board of Trustees. A longtime educator and advocate for students and their families, Mr. Bradnam leaves behind a legacy of steadfast service. He leaves behind a legacy of service, leadership, and a deep love of learning, and his passing is an immeasurable loss to the DSBN and the Niagara community. We extend our deepest condolences to his family, friends, and all those who had the honor of knowing and working alongside him, which I know includes members of our council. Some news and updates. After a busy few months of elections and electioneering, provincial, federal elections, and municipal by-election, we can finally say congratulations to Jenny Stevens, our re-elected MPP for St. Catharines, Marty Mako, elected as the Port Dalhousie Ward Councillor, and most recently last night, Chris Biddle being re-elected as the MP for St. Catharines. I also want to extend congratulations to Jeff Birch, Dean Allison, and Sam Osterhoff, who also represent portions of St. Catharines at the provincial and the federal level. I think we all look forward to working with all of them in the coming months on making St. Catharines the best place to live. Reminder to residents, and I hate that this is in my mayor's report because it's the thing that no mayor ever wants to talk about, but tomorrow, April 30th, is the second installment of the city's interim property tax bill. The city's 2025 final property tax bills will be sent in the mail or be available in the e-billing portal by May 7th, and the due dates of the final two installments will remain the same, with the first due on June 30th and the second due September 29th. Residents can find details on the city's website, or they can call Citizens First if you have questions. Earlier this month, I was able to participate in two community fundraisers along with Councillor McPherson, Lindell, and Stevens, both hosted at the Meriton Lions Club. First, we took to the lanes in support of the YMCA Move for Kids initiative, raising funds to help send kids to camp. Who was the best bowler that day? Was it Councillor Lindell? Councillor Lindell was the best bowler. It was definitely not Councillor McPherson or myself. We then participated in the Down Syndrome Niagara annual trivia night, raising funds to support families and improve opportunities for people with Down syndrome in a way that promotes independence, confidence, and inclusion. The team that won the Down Syndrome trivia night last year finished a very close second, with the final tie-breaking question being answered by me and being answered incorrectly, to many insults, frankly, insults from the rest of my team. So thank you for that, and I won't be joining you next year. I'll be with my own team. I'll probably still play with you. Yeah, we're good. Earlier this month, I was able to attend the official groundbreaking for Phase 2 of Jillian's Place, Build a Safer Future campaign. This is a project that this council has supported through the waiving of fees in the past. For over 40 years, Jillian's Place has been a lifeline for survivors of abuse, offering support, shelter, and hope. The new Murata Family Center will expand that critical work, adding a 3-story, 9,000 square foot facility to meet growing needs in our community. I want to thank the Murata family and all of the donors who were involved for their support of Jillian's Place in making the expansion of services possible. Last Friday night, myself and Councillor Lindell had the opportunity to attend the FACS Niagara Hollywood Soiree Gala in support of the FACS Foundation. I should say they rechristened it the FACS Niagara Hollywood North Soiree, in light of what's going on right now. During the evening's giving moment, guests were asked to help fuel the futures of FACS youth who are preparing for adulthood. Every $4,000 raised will provide a young person with a post-secondary bursary, 25 weeks of life skills training in cooking, budgeting, laundry, and more, and 5 holiday celebrations. During the giving moment, more than $55,000 was raised, and 14 young people will be supported. And I want to thank everyone at FACS for what they do. Their incredible hard work, dedication, and support of youth in our community is noticed. Yesterday, I spent the morning attending National Day of Mourning ceremonies hosted by the Niagara Regional Labor Council with Councillor Stevens. It was an opportunity for us to remember the workers who have died or been injured on the job, and to remind us all that we must continue to ensure our workplaces are safe for all workers across our country. And yesterday afternoon, we had the opportunity to do the same at the monument out on the front lawn, and we were joined by Councillor Ratzlaff at that time. Earlier this month, I had the opportunity to visit the folks at the Finnish Facelift as part of my Mayor Links visits. Finnish Facelift is a family-owned business right here in St. Catharines. They've helped transform more than 400 kitchens in the city. They specialize in cabinet refinishing, refacing, and custom alterations. It was really awesome. It was impressive to watch how they make it possible for homeowners to refresh their space without needing to do a full gut job, which was pretty impressive. Thank you to the team for showing us around. Thank you for telling us about their expansion plans. They look to do a whole lot more in the coming years, with more jobs being created in our community, and I want to thank them for investing in St. Catharines. I also had the opportunity to visit Linda at Happy Snack, a local bakery that serves the happiest of snacks, and they were the providers of the treats I picked up for council this evening. I will say, from the moment you walk in, it's an incredibly warm location. The smells are incredible, and absolutely amazing pastry. So if you get a chance, visit Linda and the team at 277 Welland Avenue for a treat or two. Does that side of Welland Avenue count as St. George's Ward, or is it? There we go. We got a bakery in St. George's Ward. That's what we were looking for. There we go. Car washes are important too. Some congratulations going out. Craig Mustard, congratulations to our new manager of Realty Services, Craig Mustard, on his recent recognition by the International Right-of-Way Association as its Professional of the Year. The award recognizes a right-of-way professional for their contribution and dedication to the association, a professional member organization comprised of real estate practitioners throughout the year. So congrats to Craig on his accomplishment. And this morning I was pleased to attend the grand opening of Walmart's very first ever pharmacy clinic, not just in Canada, but I believe, Mr. York, in North America. It's their first pharmacy-led clinic in North America, located right here in St. Catharines at the Walmart on 4th Avenue. The goal is simple but important: to make healthcare more affordable and accessible for the community. And the clinic offers more than just prescriptions. It provides one-on-one support, personalized service, and helps patients better understand their health and care needs. Congratulations to everyone involved in the opening and to the community. Know that that is a resource that is now available to meet their healthcare needs in our community. And finally, a reminder to join myself and Ward Councillors Stevens and Townsend for the St. George's Town Hall tomorrow night as part of the ongoing Town Hall STC series. The event will take place at the St. Catharines Kiwanis Aquatic Center in the Irene and Lawrence Lock Room from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. We look forward to seeing you there. I'm going to warn everybody that Councillor Stevens made a list, so this may go on for a little while longer. Is there anybody who wants to add anything to today's Mayor's report? Councillor Lindell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Councillor Miller and myself were able to help support the Queenston neighbors this year in their Easter egg hunt on Saturday. There were about 200 kids there at Connaught School, and it was fantastic and fun. Lots of happy kids and lots of chocolate, and probably parents up all night. The Moffat Street group, Councillor Miller and I were also able to assist them this year in cleaning up the Moffat Street area in around Disher Avenue and along the Merritt Trail. Councillor Miller was able to get them bags and pickup, and I was out there helping them pick up the garbage. By the way, important safety tip, please check for ticks before you leave the long grass. I did not. And also, Mayor, we all know that you would have gotten the correct answer at the trivia, but you relied on my husband to give you the information, and he was wrong.
Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd hoped to be there tonight for Councillor Marty Mako, Port Lizzie Ward Councillor Marty Mako's inaugural meeting, but my knee is a little bit of an issue. So not only do Councillor Mako and I share some issues with our knees, we have the same hairstyle. I want to definitely congratulate and welcome Marty, and I sincerely look forward to working in partnership with him and representing the people of Port Lizzie Ward and all across St. Catharines. And more importantly, I would like to express to Vanessa and Marty's daughters, thank you very much for sharing your husband and dad with us. It's a big commitment, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Councillor Miller.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple library goings-ons. I recognized their volunteers in April, recently at before our last board meeting. And we have a new board member in Nathan Olmstead at the library board as well. And I was going to thank Councillor Lindell for actually going to the Moffat pickup, and I thought it was emblematic that she was getting her hands dirty. But I'm more of an ideas guy, so I got the garbage bags over there. And then my only other note is Craig Mustard is a good basketball player, so if we could get him on our St. Catharines team, which needs all the help it can get, given the last few years, that would be fantastic. That's my recommendation. So thank you.
I'm sure I can arrange with a strong mayor directive. We'll talk about that afterwards. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last Thursday, we had a very important event that many of us attended, and that is to celebrate the book launch of Councillor Kushner's book. I'm not sure what the title was, but it should have been The Life and Times of Joe Kushner. I'm not sure how many copies were sold, but I want to congratulate him on being the longest-serving councillor in the province, maybe all of Canada, who knows. But it was done with class, as you would expect, and furthermore, every cent of proceeds is being donated back to the Niagara Arts Center, as is the style that Councillor Kushner would want it to be done. So, Councillor Kushner, congratulations on the launch of your book and a very successful career.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on the Easter egg hunt theme, myself and Councillor Ratzlaff, we held the first annual? Yeah. Fairhaven Neighborhood Group Easter egg hunt, and thankfully you lent us your chief of staff to help us stuff thousands, I feel like it was thousands, yes, of eggs with candy. And then unfortunately I wasn't able to attend the Fitz Neighborhood Easter egg hunt, but Councillor Ratzlaff handled that in an incredible job himself. And we also held a Easter egg hunt at St. Nicholas School, which also had thousands of Easter eggs. And we look forward to doing it next year.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, it's been like 3 or 4 weeks since our last meeting, so there was a lot of events going on. So Friday, April 11th, Healthy Planet opened in the Fairview Mall. It's a healthy grocery store, not just a supplement store, but a grocery store. So they invested down here in the area of Fairview Mall, knowing the potential with the future development of all the homes and apartments, condos, and everything that are going in the area. So they see the value there, and it's a very good store. So that area now has a discount grocery store, a high-end grocery store, and a healthier grocery store. So it was very good and well attended. Their lineups were there, and they got a lot of really good products. So check it out, Healthy Planet, Fairview Mall. On Wednesday, the 16th, the airport had their annual AGM, and we had over 50 people coming to explain what some of the future plans and the growth are for the Niagara District Airport. And there's a public meeting coming up on Wednesday, May 7th from 3 to 7, open to the public. So come down and see what really good ideas we have for the growth of the airport and get your input in on that one. Thursday the 17th, the Holiday Inn and Heart Niagara had their 50th anniversary. It was attended by yourself and a few other councillors were there. It was a very good event. And I mean, the Nitso's family, they just go crazy when they have a party. So it was a very nice event and well attended. And there was a fundraiser for, they have their own charity group that they were also collecting for. So, Tuesday, the 22nd, we had our volunteer awards that Councillor McPherson, Councillor Phillips, yourself were there to honor all the volunteers here in St. Catharines. It's a great night. It's held at the Market Square every year. You know, so many clubs and organizations can't do what they do without all the volunteers. You can't put a price on what volunteers do. So that was really good, and that was great. In between there somewhere, I can't remember the date, Links for Greener Learning had their Market Square Earth Day that they do every year for a lot of the downtown schools. It's free to all the schools. They have sponsorships, and it's well attended by all the schools, and there's some hands-on events and everything. And I was able to pay for the school lunches with our community council fund. So all the kids got to have a good lunch out of the deal there. The Armenian Hall, Friday the 25th, the genocide remembrance of the 110th anniversary of the massacre of Armenians done by the Ottoman Empire. So it's, you know, we should never forget something like that. You know, it should never have happened. The Twinning Association of St. Catharines, we're trying to bring that back to fruition, how it used to be back in the day. It was really good. They had their AGM the other night, and they have an upcoming event. I have to plug it for them, sorry. So they're hosting with the River Lions, they're hosting a Trinidad and Caribbean Culture Night with the River Lions, and you can get your free ticket with your membership on twinning.ca. So you can check that out there. So great to bring that back. That's been association partnership with the city since 1968, and it's really lapsed in the last few years. So I know you've been involved with some meetings too to try to get that going again with trade and everything. And it's probably more important now than ever with our neighbors to the south, as everyone likes to throw out there. So it'd be nice to do some more work with those guys. And cookie day yesterday. I made cookies yesterday for Hotel du Shaver and Community Care out on Low Street. So, and ate a couple after I bought them and paid for them, brought them home. But anyways, that's about it. And one more thing, Folk Arts is kicking in gear this month coming up. The Harmony Ball, used to be the Ambassadors Ball, is this Thursday. And the first night is Club LaSalle, Friday night. So check out all the events for Folk Arts. They have great meals and great entertainment. It's great to see all the different cultures here in our area. So,
Round of applause for Councillor Mark Stevens. Councillor Mark Stevens, Community Billboard. I love it. Thank you, Councillor Stevens. All right, that's it for the mayor's report. We will look over to the clerk for the adoption of the agenda.
The following amendments have been made to the agenda this evening. Councillor Phillips would like to request that council consider a motion not appearing on the agenda regarding the council community and priority fund, and per council's procedure bylaw, section M6.4, motions not appearing on the agenda can only be considered if council votes unanimously in favor of considering the motion. If that motion passes, then council will consider the matter under the motions portion on the agenda. And Councillor Ratzlaff would like to consider that council consider an additional delegation request from Kiana Schuster regarding item 9.2, public space use bylaw and implementation plan. Per council's procedure bylaw, delegations can be heard if council waives the rules of procedure and is passed by a 2/3 vote. If the motion passes, the delegate will be heard prior to discussing item 9.2. And the following item of additional correspondence has been placed in council's sugar sync folder. Confidential memorandum from Deputy Clerk regarding individual recommended for appointment to the St. Catharines Municipal Development Corporation Board.
Okay, before we get into what's just been listed, Councillor Harris, you had a question?
I was wondering if I could move, I believe it's item 6.5 of the consent to discussion, if that's what applies to what Councillor Kushner and I were asking about a few weeks ago.
So you're looking to pull 6.5 from consent?
Yeah.
And is this related to the motion?
Yep.
So then I'm going to be declaring a conflict of interest on 6.5
Yes.
for the reasons as stated previously, and I'll fill out my declaration.
Not the entire 6.5, but part of it.
Okay, so that will be an amendment to the agenda. Okay, so first we'll start with the motion to consider a motion not appearing on the agenda. Moving the motion to allow the motion to be considered this evening is Councillor Phillips. Seconding that is Councillor McPherson. So this is allowing the motion not appearing on the agenda regarding an amendment to the Council Community and Priority Fund. All those in favor of allowing the motion? Opposed? That's carried. The motion now is to consider a late delegation request. This requires a 2/3 majority vote. Moving the motion to allow the delegation request, I have Councillor Ratzlaff. Do I have a seconder for this? Councillor Miller. So that in accordance with procedural bylaw 2024-155, section D 1.3, council will consider a late delegation request. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. So can I have a motion now to adopt the agenda as amended with Councillor Harris's request? Councillor Lindell, Councillor Phillips. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Adoption of the minutes, that council adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting held on April 7th, 2025. Can I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Mako, Councillor Kushner. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Councillor Harris. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? I have a declaration of pecuniary interest as indicated previously, and I will fill out the online written statement declaration thing to item, what's the number going to be? Will it still be 6.5? Yeah. Are we making it a different number though? It'll still be 6.5? Okay. So on item 6.5. Seeing no other, we'll move on to number 5. Item 6.3, the demolition control bylaw has also been moved from consent to discussion as there is a registered delegate and will be discussed after item 7.1. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Councillor McPherson. I will look to the clerk to read the list of consent reports and call the recorded vote.
Today's consent agenda is item 6.1, Community Recreation Culture Services, Community Initiatives and Partnerships, Special Event Fee Reduction Task Force Terms of Reference Update. Item 6.2, Economic Development and Tourism Services, Request for Funding for Tourism St. Catharines, Matched Fund Pilot Program. Item 6.4, Planning and Building Services, Request to sign acknowledgement and consent of assignment for Heritage Point Phase 2, Brownfield Tax Increment-Based Incentive Grant Program. And item 6.6, Financial Management Services, 2024 Year-End Report and Reserve Update. Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
Councillor Stevens?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Councillor Mako?
Yes.
Councillor Lindell?
Yes.
Councillor Kushner?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff?
Yes.
Councillor Townsend?
Yes.
Mayor Sisko?
Yes.
That's carried.
I just looked up and realized I was hoping that Councillor Mako's wife and daughters had left because we're into the minutia stuff, and I was like, I hope they're not just sitting here and watching how Dad's going to spend his Monday nights for the rest of this year. All right, declaration to all presenters. Council chambers in all municipalities in our country represent the seed of local democracy. The many acts that govern us understand the necessity of a collective voice when decisions are being made to grow our spaces, pass our bylaws, and to seek opinions into very complex issues, ensuring safe spaces for all in our public discourse. We recognize the right of the majority to decide, the minority to be heard, the public to have an opportunity to participate, and all participants to be treated with courtesy and respect. It is imperative that elected officials, citizens, and staff have input, and it is paramount that we listen to one another and question one another, but that we understand we do this in a way that never undermines any person's ability or their dignity in our chambers. We respect the right for everyone to have an opinion and remind the audience views of the public do not always reflect those of the Corporation of the City of St. Catharines. At this time, we'll move into public meetings and 7.1, Planning and Building Services. Planning Services Council initiated amendment to the 2020 CIP for 142 Queenston Street. The purpose of this public meeting is to ensure that sufficient information is available for the public and the council to understand the proposed council-initiated amendment to the 2020 CIP for 142 Queenston Street, and to provide the public with an opportunity for input before council's decision. If a specified person or public body as defined in the Planning Act or the registered owner of the land does not make an oral submission at the public meeting or written submission to council prior to council making its decision, they are not entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. If a person does not make an oral submission at the public meeting or written submission prior to the council decision, that person may not be added as a party to the hearing of any appeals by others without the permission of the tribunal. The public meeting will proceed as follows. Staff will explain the council-initiated amendment to the 2020 CIP for 142 Queenston Street. After that, members of the public wishing to delegate were advised to register by 9 a.m. today. No one requested to speak. The deadline to submit additional written comments not previously published on the council correspondence listing was 12 p.m. today. No written comments were received. At that time, I will ask if anybody in attendance wishes to speak. Once that has happened, the public meeting will be closed. Then council will be able to ask staff questions and will consider the motion to amend the 2020 CIP for 142 Queenston Street. Stephen Litt, the Chief Development Officer for Vive Developments, will be present on Zoom in case of questions from council. At this time, the public meeting is now open, and I'll call upon Elena Campbell, Community Improvement Coordinator, to present. Ms. Campbell?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. This presentation is to make an amendment to the city's 2020 Community Improvement Plan for 142 Queenston Street. So on March 31st, Council directed staff to draft an amendment to the 2020 CIP to permit the current property owner of 142 Queenston Street to incur eligible project cost for proposed development prior to entering a formal CIP agreement between the city and the applicant. Currently, under the 2020 CIP, eligible project costs incurred prior to executing an agreement are not retroactively eligible for the Tax Increment Finance, or TIF, incentive, or the Brownfield Tax Increment Finance, or BTIF, incentive. Since the applicant, sorry, it keeps skipping. Okay. Since the applicant's request is prohibited under the 2020 CIP and not commonly practiced, we're here today to go through the public meeting process to permit this request. Should this amendment pass and the project be approved for the TIF or BTIF program, eligible project costs incurred after this meeting date will be considered for the grant. This amendment applies to the current property owner of 142 Queenston and any related entities of the numbered company. The next steps for the applicant to be approved for a CIP grant are outlined. The applicant has begun to submit materials for an official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and a plan of subdivision. The Planning Act applications will first need to be deemed complete for the review process to begin. After council decides on the development applications and no appeals are received, the property owner would then apply to the TIF or BTIF program. Staff will then review the application to see if it meets CIP requirements and reaches the 50-point minimum and bring that application to council for consideration for this 10-year incentive programs. Notice of the public meeting has been circulated and no comments were received from the public or specified bodies. A notice was also provided in the standard and the Engage STC page was updated for this amendment. So staff recommend the approval of the bylaw to revise the 2020 CIP specific to this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. At this time, are there any members in attendance wishing to speak on this issue? I'll ask one more time. Is there anybody in attendance wishing to speak on this issue? All right, seeing none. At this time, can I have a motion to close the public meeting? Councillor Lindell, Councillor Harris. This is a motion to close the public meeting. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Public meeting is now closed and council is called to order. Persons wishing to receive notice of council's decision should submit a written request to the office of the city clerk. Is there a councillor who would like to move the staff recommendation in the report today? Councillor Lindell, Councillor Stevens. As a reminder, this is, we got a report on this a couple of weeks ago, and this is the technical piece that we had to accommodate after making our decision at that time. So the motion is on the screen. Are there any speakers to the motion? Seeing none, I will look to the clerk to call the roll. Just one second.
Councillor Lindell?
Yes.
Councillor Stevens?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
Councillor Townsend?
Yes.
Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Kushner? Yes. Councillor Mako?
Yes.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes?
Councillor Ratzlaff?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
And Mayor Cisco?
Yes.
That's carried.
Moving on, there are no presentations for this evening, so we'll go to number 9. And the first will be 9.3, Planning and Building Services, Building and Development Demolition Control Bylaw. Prior to discussion on the report, council will hear a delegation from Chuck McShane on behalf of the Niagara Home Builders Association and its members. So at this time, Mr. McShane, if you want to come up to the lectern. Welcome, sir. The lectern is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Cisco, council members, city staff, and members of the gallery. My name is Chuck McShane, and I'm proud to serve as the CEO of the Niagara Home Builders Association, an association that has been the voice of the home building industry and the new home purchaser here in Niagara for 70 years. I'm here to speak on the proposed demolition bylaw and how it will affect the housing starts and future investment in the city of St. Catharines if adopted as proposed. It's no secret we are in a housing and economic crisis, and the NHBA appreciates the mayor's housing directive to increase housing supply in the city. However, we caution council that unintended consequences of preserving existing assessment will lead to less assessment growth over the longer term. Notwithstanding council's intention to prevent demolition of existing housing stock, the failure of this bylaw to contemplate economic and market realities will lead to more stranded properties, worsening streetscapes, less investment, and housing production. The NHBA shares the view that lands and homes are meant to be utilized and redeveloped to maximize their value and benefit to the community. Developers don't acquire lands in order to let them languish in perpetuity. However, processes and market conditions often delay our ability to do so in a timely manner. Penalizing these redevelopments with onerous restrictions, oversight, vacant building registration costs, and penalties do not incent redevelopments. Instead, they foster acrimony and resentment. Given past experiences in other municipalities in the Greater Toronto Area with similar demolition bylaws, it's clear that there are several limitations with the exemptions provided. These pose challenges for those municipalities, and hence, St. Catharines should examine this bylaw further before proceeding. In particular, the exemptions that allows for the demolition of a residential dwelling if it has been deemed unsafe by the chief building official needs to be analyzed. There are many instances where a builder, developer, investor acquires a property with the intentions of redeveloping under the Planning Act, and there is an existing residential dwelling on the property. The existing dwelling is typically in poor condition, but may not meet the criteria of unsafe by the chief building official. In these cases, unsafe can have several meanings. For example, unsafe from building department perspective may mean that the building is not structurally sound. However, unsafe from a developer builder's perspective may mean that while the house is structurally sound, it is in poor condition, not habitable, or could result in injury to a tenant if major renovations and repairs are not undertaken. The residential dwelling will more than likely be boarded up, constantly broke into, and renovations not undertaken due to development applications and the process. This is a major gap in the exemption that will prove to be problematic. Further, this exemption should be expanded to allow for the safety of the structure to be determined by a qualified professional, a qualified structural engineer with a stamp retained by the owner, may conclude in their report that a residential dwelling is unsafe and should be demolished. However, the city's chief building official, upon inspection, may disagree. In this situation, the developer, builder, investor can no longer be held liable for any injury that may happen within this dwelling, as a demolition permit was denied even with sufficient documentation from a qualified professional. With the aforementioned, the NHBA and its members would ask the council to defer the decision on this bylaw until a full and concise staff report is brought forth that takes into consideration all the factors and whatever pitfalls this bylaw could do to stifle future investment in the city of St. Catharines with regards to the future of its housing market. Thank you. I look forward to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. McShane. Are there any questions from council? Councillor Kushner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is a lot of this demolition done for the purpose of intensifying the property?
That would be the number one reason for doing that, and we know if somebody, a builder or a developer, a councillor, comes and looks at a property, the house is no good, and they look at it and they go, well, we can intensify that, but we don't want to carry that thing for the 9 months or the 18 months it's going to take to get the zoning change and everything else. The house obviously needs to come down.
Right, and for the intensification, you would have to satisfy the current bylaws.
Well, you would have to, with the current bylaw, or with the new bylaw that's being proposed, you would have to go through all your zoning changes, all of that, and an approved building permit before you could get your demolition permit. So you might have to sit on that place for 18 months, 24 months, depending on how long all of those, how long that application takes. So that's just another added cost, which will deter investment in this city. It will deter intensification. Certainly it will do that. And that's not what St. Catharines asked for day in and day out. They want more housing.
Right,
So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kushner. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. McShane. Just a question, well, a couple actually, because there's many municipalities that have a almost exact same demolition bylaw. Have you spoken to developers in Hamilton regarding, because what I've heard and been told by folks I've spoken to is, and especially when it comes to actually getting developments done, is it hasn't delayed the process.
Well, that's, I appreciate the developers that you've spoken to, but I spoke with a bunch of our members that build up there day in and day out, and they're saying Hamilton is, and this was today after a council meeting, there was some councillors that are questioning this bylaw because they have a lot of vacant buildings that are being overrun, and they're a nightmare. So thank you, councillor.
Okay, and then the second question I have is when it comes to the speculation portion of it, of what you spoke about, a developer sees a building, they want to, they want to renovate it, they have plans for the property. When there are people living in those buildings, and then they are evicted so that the developer can, flatten the building.
Right.
And then the property sits vacant, and there's lots of properties all around the city where this has happened, where properties are sitting vacant while the developer goes through the process, but the buildings are vacant.
I have had some developers that have went through the process and have actually rented properties like that out and clearly stated to the people that are renting it, don't ask me for a new hot water tank, don't ask me for this, don't ask me for that. That's all up to you. I'm now your landlord. You're going to pay me the money for the property taxes. That's legal. And, that's what happens. Nobody wants to carry in costs of these properties. I've been in some of these properties. You cannot put somebody in there to live. And yet, we can sit around here and say it's habitable. None of us would live in that. None of us would live in that. So
I think a lot of people are living in those buildings right now. That kind of a lot of people are living in those kinds of.
We're talking about single-family dwellings, most of them. That's what we're talking about, a single-family dwelling. I know where this all comes from, right? It doesn't go to commercial buildings unless it has rentals over top, multiples. And this original bylaw that came through in 2017 was not based on single-family dwellings. It was based on people coming in and knocking down 6, 8-unit apartment buildings to build something bigger. That's where this original bylaw came from the province, not for a single property. We are so into intensification right now, especially here in St. Catharines. St. Catharines has nowhere to grow. Right? There's no urban boundary expansion coming here. We need intensification, and we can see it. We need not look any further. And just before I came up here, I drove down Queenston Street. All right, how long's that been going on? Right? If we're going to enact something like this, for somebody to take something down, incentivifications. So yeah, you
So
can.
we already have intent.
Whether it be a
Incentives.
DC or especially if it's like.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through the presenter. So you're asking that it goes back to staff for maybe a little bit more in detail? I can ask staff questions later because, and I can see maybe where it doesn't address, like it has a timeline. Once a building's fully demolished, you got a 2-year deadline imposed. Now, by the time you buy the property, get the permit to demolish it, and then if you wait on it and then do your drawings and stuff and goes to committee of adjustment and everything, what happens if the process, due to us being busy and not have enough staff or resources available, that 2-year deadline happens, and it's through no fault of yours? I don't see that being addressed in here. Is that what your kind of concern is, that we need to address that a little bit more in detail?
Timelines, and I know we hear about this greedy thing, but none of us are going to invest our money in an RSP or in anything if we're not going to make any money. We're here to do a service. We want people to be in homes. That's our goal. There's nothing that makes a builder happier than to be able to pass the keys to a new home to somebody. That's what we do it for, right? Yes, we need to make money. However, the longer the process goes and the more the cost goes up and the red tape goes up, the cost of that house, we talk about attainability, we talk about affordability. By doing this, we are just making the price go up. We want intensification. There's nobody at this table that's sitting around here doesn't believe in intensification, and so do we. But it's a different animal. It's different than a full subdivision. It's different than a large plot. You have to get zoning changes. You have to go through committee of adjustments. It's on and on and on and on, and you have to carry that dilapidated house if it is. If anything, it should be a discussion, right, whether it has to be torn down. And you know what? I don't know what the inventory is. Is there an inventory of these empty lots right now? Do we have an inventory in St. Catharines? I'm wondering. Is there like 10 of them? 12 of them? 12 empty lots? Is that why we're proposing this bylaw? So, before, I mean, as a business person, I would probably speak to the people that own those properties before we implement something like this and say, hey, listen, how can we help you build on that property? How can we help you move forward? Same thing as what you're doing at the hospital property now, the CIP or whatever. I'm not saying you got to give them money. I'm saying make the process easy, make it go faster. But nobody's buying homes right now, we know that. Niagara Falls had 6 permits in the first quarter. So let's make it easier, not harder. And we want to work. Obviously, our industry wants to work with you. We want to provide this housing. But let's make it so that everybody's happy.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Harris.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the presenter. So what you're looking for is council to refer this back to staff to address some of your concerns and perhaps consult the Home Builders Association, then come back with a more fulsome...
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no other questions, thank you very much, Mr. McShane, for your presentation.
Thank you.
At this time, can I have a motion to receive
I forgot to say one thing. Thursday is the kickoff for the Help Kids Shine campaign for the Children's Center. So let's spread the word.
I was almost going to shut him down, and then it was a really good cause, so I figured I'd let him finish. Can I get a mover and a seconder to receive the delegation? Councillor Harris, Councillor Phillips, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And then can I have a councillor to move the recommendation in the report? Councillor McPherson. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Ratzlaff. And I have in the queue Councillor Harris to speak.
In light of the present...
Keep going.
In light of the presentation, I was hoping that I could make a motion to refer it and get council's support, and then perhaps put a time frame on when it can come back and staff can address some of the issues. Councillor Stevens made a good point. Sometimes we can't control how quick things happen at the city. So,
can I take a look and ask maybe the Director of Planning or someone else from that sphere how long it would take to come back with a memo or follow-up report to append to this?
So through the mayor to council, staff have already met with the Niagara Home Builders Association. So I think perhaps a little bit more direction on what council is looking for staff to report back. This is something we can turn around fairly quickly. But also to Councillor Stevens' earlier comments, there is discretion within the bylaw. It doesn't mean that at the 2-year point that automatically, you know, the gavel comes down. There is discretion on when these things would occur. It's, you know, any other questions that council may have to be directed to myself or the CBO are welcome this evening.
So, Councillor, do you want to provide a little bit more direction with respect
I would
to the
still like to refer it back, and I guess I would like to understand the process about discretion and what that actually means and whose discretion it is, and I'd kind of like that spelled out in the report to come back.
Okay, so we have a motion to refer. Councillor, it's not debatable. Councillor Kushner, if there's something you want to add to that. Can we open Councillor Kushner's mic?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The direction would be to respond to the questions raised by the speaker and also to take a more thorough investigation of what's happening in the city of Hamilton, which was referred to in the discussion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stevens, again, we're not debating.
No, I ask a question about it?
It depends on what the question is.
Well,
You can ask a procedural question.
Like planning said that it's at discretion, but like Councillor Harris saying, at whose? Shouldn't it be more in writing?
So that's that's what Councillor
Okay.
Harris is asking for in the report. Okay. Do I have a seconder for the motion to refer? I'm assuming Councillor Stevens. All right. All those in favor to refer? Opposed? It carries. So it's been referred. And we will move on. So this is a clerical error, but on my part and the clerk's part, we're going to share responsibility for this. Item 9.2, which is the public space use bylaw and implementation plan, should have been moved ahead of 9.1, as we do have individuals who are here to speak to it. So I'm asking council's indulgence. Can we just get a general agreement that we're going to move 9.2 up and deal with that next? 9.1 does not have anybody to speak to it except for staff. So, all right, then we will move on to item 9.2, which is the public space use bylaw and implementation plan. Prior to the discussion on the report, I will look to Dave Oakes, the Chief Administrative Officer, to provide opening comments. After that, we will have 2 delegations, potentially. Mr. Oakes?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report in front of council is a follow-up to a report that was brought forward in January, which was speaking to the mayor's direction from November. This specifically is looking for council approval on the public space use bylaw, which essentially is intended to regulate and manage the use of public spaces throughout the city-owned public spaces with regards to encampments, the ability where to have encampments, the ability for staff to be able to go in and clean up and manage encampments throughout the city. We've seen a prevalence in the encampments, and we've been working very closely with Niagara Region Community Services and their homelessness services to be able to work with the unhoused. That is the responsibility of the Niagara Region. The responsibility of the municipality is to ensure our public spaces are to be enjoyed by all, and the intent of the bylaw is to do that. We have been working for several years on different strategies along with Niagara Region on how best to address the situation. We have the shelter on Riordan. We have all of the other different programs that are managed through Niagara Region Community Services that we work in part and parcel with. But at the end of the day, one of the issues that we're challenged with is having some regulation on how and what we can do in the public space to allow all of the community to be able to enjoy the parks, the trails. From a health and safety standpoint, the proximity to residential neighborhoods, to schools are all addressed in the bylaw. The intent is really to give staff that ability to, again, work with the region and manage that process. But we have to, in many situations, bring contractors in to do cleanups once we have had encampments and individuals put into the shelter system or find housing. It's a cost that's borne by the municipality. We continue to bear those costs on a daily basis. And what we're hoping that this bylaw will really do, and it's informed by a very similar process that the City of Guelph and Oshawa have undertaken. We're following what works, what has worked in those municipalities and others, Ottawa, London, to be able to address this in a way that is balancing the needs of all residents, including those that do not currently have homes. And, you know, the partnership with the region and the ability for us to provide some greater certainty to the broader public on what is available and providing some regulatory use restrictions in different zones is the intent of that. So I just wanted to give that overview.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Oakes. At this time, we'll hear a delegation from Saleh Waziruddin by Zoom.
Hi, Mayor and Councillors. I'm Saleh Waziruddin. When people are complaining about encampments or unhoused people near them, the only positive or helping hand thing you can do is give supports in places where you prefer unhoused people to be. Halifax and Kelowna have done this. They have portable toilets and bottled water in places where they prefer encampments. But what you can't do is enforcement or the iron fist, because that means punishing people for just trying to exist. There are good reasons unhoused people go where they're going. The right to exist outweighs any disturbance or disorder or costs people are complaining about. The proposed bylaw says shelter will be found first before enforcement. But shelter doesn't make sense for everyone and is just a cover for cruelty sometimes. Years ago, I was told by a social worker I needed to move into a shelter for temporary gain, which would have actually made my situation so much worse. And I asked her if she knows how senseless that suggestion was, because like many people, she had no practical sense of what it really means. Many women especially refuse to go into shelters because of safety. Unhoused people are where they are because that is the best option they have. You can improve the options with support for encampments where you prefer them. Obviously, the best option is supportive, affordable, and social housing. But until then, you should use incentives, not punishment, to get the outcome you want. Fines are not going to be a deterrent, especially for every day or every part of a day, as the proposed bylaw says. Counting is a new offense, because many unhoused people can't pay these fines anyway. They're forced out of desperation to take risks, like devastating punishment from the law for just trying to live. It makes even less sense to make unhoused people pay for removing their tents as cost recovery. Punishing organizations for, quote, concurring, as the bylaw proposes, with violations of the proposed bylaw is dystopian. It's punishing people and groups for trying to protect unhoused people from discrimination. Please don't weigh disturbance for the housed more than the right to exist for the unhoused. Most of us are just a short tragedy away from being forced into losing housing, even if we don't want to see it. Please don't approve any steps against removing tents or temporary shelters anywhere. Please don't use fines or other punishment to make a hard life even harder for people who can't pay in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Waziruddin. Are there any questions or comments for the presenter? All right, seeing none, thank you for your presentation. At this time, I will call on Kiana Schuster to present. The lectern is yours and the mic is on.
Hi, thank you for having me this evening and letting me speak. I would just like to say that I do not support this bylaw, as I don't believe it reflects an approach to grounded in compassion or harm reduction. In my opinion, it will very likely push individuals who are already struggling with housing even further into the bush, making their lives more unsafe and isolated. I am attending today on behalf of NAIL, Niagara Advocates with Lived and Living Experience of Substance Use. Our mission is to advocate for individuals with lived experience of substance use within the Niagara region. Our vision is to promote safety, dignity, respect, and rights for those who that we represent throughout the community. I don't believe the core issue is the encampments themselves. In an ideal world, homelessness would be eradicated, but criminalizing people who are experiencing homelessness is not the answer. Speaking as someone who has personally experienced homelessness, mental health, addictions, and struggles in my teen years, I am passionate about advocating for others in similar situations. We need to remember that these people affected by this bylaw are someone's son, daughter, mother, or father. No one is born intending to experience homelessness or addiction. Many of these individuals have faced serious trauma or adverse childhood events that led them down these paths. Their stories deserve to be heard with empathy and not judgment. I currently work in the field of social services. Since COVID, we have adopted a home shelter model, which means that after 90 days of accessing shelter, this becomes your designated shelter. If there is a bed available elsewhere, you cannot access unless it is done during management hours, Monday through Friday. This system is restrictive and does not reflect the realities or urgencies of many individuals that these individuals face. The point I want to make regarding this encampment bylaw is that we need to find real, compassionate solutions to better serve our most vulnerable populations. Yes, the region has opened new shelters over the past year, but it hasn't solved our housing crisis. It simply has increased shelter beds without creating actual homes for people. What we truly need is affordable housing, rent geared to income units, supportive housing, transitional housing, reduced wait times for Niagara Regional housing. Right now, people face wait lists of 10 or more years just to access NRH housing, or you have to have special priority. Additionally, our community has lost our Out of the Cold program, which was allowed people to sleep in churches overnight. It provided a vital safety net, especially for those who couldn't access regional shelters due to restrictions in the HIFAS system. Now with the shift to home shelters, many are left with no option but to stay in encampments. I would also like to share that I live paycheck to paycheck in today's economy. If I were to lose my job for any reason, I wouldn't be able to afford a roof over my head or my children's. This is the reality. It is closer to many than people think. Thank you for your thoughts and take my thoughts into considerations. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for the presentation. Are there any questions for the presenter? Seeing none, thank you again for the presentation. Can I have a motion to receive our two delegations? Councillor Miller, Councillor Phillips, all those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. So we will now move on to the bylaw, and Councillor Phillips has a recommendation that he will be moving, seconded by Councillor McPherson. Next one. So it'll be the next one, sir. Oh, it's on your screen? Okay, there you go. Okay. So on the screen is the amended motion from Councillor Phillips, seconded by Councillor McPherson. There are also a list of amendments that were sent through with respect to the bylaw, and everything here was sent through to council with the exception of the final paragraph there. The bolded section, this was actually something that legal caught through conversation and recognized was missing from the original version. So that is an additional amendment that you haven't seen, but it's that bolded version there. So I will now open the floor to questions or comments if you want to add yourself to the queue. Before we begin, I'm just going to add a few comments. As the CAO said, this bylaw is about keeping our public spaces clean and safe. As councillors know, one of the biggest complaints that we get right now, and I would wager all of us get these concerns, complaints, emails on a regular basis, is about the state of our public spaces and the public spaces being taken over in some cases by tent encampments. And many of the concerns come from very sensitive parts of the community. I've said this before, there are legal decisions in the province of Ontario that have put forward a philosophy that if there's no shelter available, it's wrong to demand that the encampments disappear. I've been clear in the past, I'll say it again now, I actually agree with that philosophy. I think it's the moral and ethical way to look at this. If someone has nowhere to live, then they need somewhere to live. And encampments sometimes are the only option that they have. With that said, One of the problems we're running into is that many of these encampments wind up adjacent to or attached to sensitive uses. Could be anything from an elementary school to a playground or a sporting field where there are kids playing. It could be next to the cemetery, up against the back fences of residential properties. I've argued in the past, I'm going to continue to argue, a municipality has to have the ability to regulate its land use. That is the purpose of this. We have that ability in every other case. We can tell you where to put your deck. We can tell you whether your house that you want to build is too tall or too short. We can tell you what percentage of the land can be the house and what percentage can be the driveway. But in this one unique instance, previous court decisions have said that we can't have any say on this. The government has indicated, the provincial government has indicated that they'll be introducing legislation, and there is now a more recent court decision which I think lends credence to the position that we should have the ability to do that land use regulation. With that all said, the purpose of today's bylaw is to lay out those areas where encampments can't exist. As I said, those sensitive uses that exist in our community, and to give staff the ability to keep our public spaces as safe and clean areas. There have been questions raised about, well, why doesn't the city put out a map of where encampments can go? And I've said this in the past. I know this opinion is shared by members of council because I've had this conversation. The city should not authorize encampments. We've seen what happens when that occurs. Hamilton has gone through that. It's created a very difficult position, and now cities like Hamilton that put in place authorized encampments are walking those policies back because they have not worked. The strategy has been tried, it doesn't work. And so to that question, I say the city will not authorize encampments because frankly, I don't believe, and I don't think anybody here believes that encampments are the best option. Encampments are not. Encampments are just about the worst option. The reality is that the region should be building shelters and supportive housing and rent geared to income housing. And those are the things that I've been advocating for the last 2.5 years. And to be blunt, I've been blocked multiple times at regional council. I've been pushed back against by staff saying, well, we don't actually need that. Well, clearly we do because we still have tent encampments across our city. So when people make those arguments to me, it's an attempt by some to download this issue onto the local area municipality. And the city simply can't because the city doesn't have the mandate. We don't have the capacity to deal with homelessness. And that's why I say this is not a homelessness issue from the city's perspective. This is about regulating our public spaces to make sure that they can be used by everybody. So I don't believe the city should authorize the co-opting of the public land for private purposes. I just don't believe that's right. There are legal decisions we have to abide by. I agree with the underlying philosophy. The goal of this bylaw is to regulate those public spaces and to identify the areas where it's just not possible to accommodate encampments, okay? It's well known, it's backed up by lots of our cleanup efforts that folks that are living unsheltered in encampments are living in some of the most dangerous living situations. We know that some encampments are very unsafe. We know that some encampments have human trafficking going on in them. We know they have drug trafficking going on in them. We know there's drug abuse. We know there's other illegal activities. And the city can't authorize those encampments in places that are sensitive use to the public. It's not okay for them to be close to schools. It's not okay for them to be built underneath playground structures. We can't allow them adjacent to people's residences. That's not possible. So I look forward to the debate. We have a number of councillors on the list already, and I will look to Councillor Miller for comment.
Yeah, thank you. The first thing, I just want to ask to refer this back to staff. We had a number of emailed, and particularly the email from Professor Neufeld-Brock that I would like to see addressed and some of the issues that were brought up tonight. So I'm wondering if we can refer back to staff to do more consultation with the community and answer some of those questions and issues.
Okay, so we have a motion to refer. It's not debatable. All those in favor of the referral? Do we have a seconder for the referral? Sorry, Councilor Ratzhoff. All those in favor of the referral? Opposed? So that is lost. Councilor Miller, do you have the floor?
Yeah, I'm still struggling a little bit with this idea that we're not authorizing encampments, but we're I guess extra prohibiting or restricting them in some areas. So how does that not result in a de facto, like a real life situation where they are allowed in some areas of the city, or at least that this bylaw won't be enforced in those areas? Like, can someone, I guess, maybe explain further what this bylaw is trying to do if we're saying they're not authorized anywhere? then why do we need this bylaw at all? Doesn't the existence of this bylaw create a situation where they are allowed in some parts of the city?
So I can answer that because I've had this debate many times. The reason why we need this bylaw is at present, we have no mechanism, because of the court decisions that have come down, we have no mechanism to be able to remove those encampments that are in sensitive areas. And I'll use the example of adjacent to an elementary school. We have no mechanism unless there is an identified public safety issue. And because of the court rulings that have come down from Waterloo and Kingston, there's a lot of hesitance because we don't really have any guidelines on what that enforcement mechanism looks like. The purpose of this bylaw is to give us a mechanism to be able to say, okay, these are the areas where not. As I said, and I think your point is a good one and a valid one, Councilor Miller, we're not authorizing. The reality is the court system has authorized. The court system has given de facto agreement that that has to take place. So what we're saying is, okay, we accept the court's ruling until there's new precedent, but these are the restrictions we need to place. That's the purpose of the bylaw.
Okay, so, and I get, maybe we're not gonna put out a map, and I can appreciate why not. But how do we avoid the sort of the clustered encampments and the ghettoization of areas that places like Hamilton saw, even though we're not saying, hey, you can go here, we really are kind of saying that because we restrict it in almost like there's like looking at these setbacks and things like that. I mean, it's got to be a gigantic portion, and anywhere close to residential property, like there's only going to be a couple places that aren't restricted.
So to that point, there are going to be fewer places than currently. But the reality is a lot of them are places where these encampments do already exist. I will also say the work of our staff to clean up encampments, and I'm going to give some credit to the region right now, which I don't do very often. They have made better efforts with the changes they made to Nassau to start identifying ways to get people into shelter. So I think we're starting to make some progress. They've also agreed to, they agreed to build the additional shelter in Welland. They're building the bridge housing, I believe, is starting construction today or tomorrow in St. Catharines. So there are opportunities for more supportive housing spaces. But we have clustering as it stands. Part of the purpose of this bylaw is also to try and get a handle on those encampments that are able to exist, because anybody who has walked past one of the locations that currently has encampments would recognize that there are major problems with respect to biohazardous materials, garbage and waste strewn all about. It's becoming hazardous for people within the community to be able to go through those spaces, and that is a problem that has to be dealt with through the bylaw.
I guess I understand that, but doesn't, I can look at my ward at Richard Pierpoint Park, I think a lot of it will allow encampments, or at least won't not allow or authorize, but will have encampments and already has encampments. Won't this just increase the size of those encampments by not allowing them and cleaning them up and removing them in several other parts of the city and moving all, whatever it said, 40 or 60 people who are currently living in the city in encampments to one or two areas? Isn't that just going to exacerbate the issues?
Well, to the point that's been made a couple of times, one thing we don't want to be doing is trying to push these issues away. And if we have them semi-regulated in an area where we can keep track and keep things at least in a state which doesn't look like it does now, so a little bit cleaner and a little bit healthier from a public health standpoint, if Nassau is continuing to be engaged, hopefully we can get these folks into shelter or into supportive housing or whatever the case is. I don't want to set up a situation, I don't think any of us want to set up a situation where we're chasing people away from public spaces so that we can't find them and can't offer them the help. And I should point this out, it's not us offering the help. And I fall into that trap because I'm also a member of regional council, but it's important to recognize that's not the function of city staff. And ultimately, right now, we're tasking our staff to go out and try and clean up these areas, but we're doing it with a hand tied behind our back because there are restrictions on what our staff can actually go in and do.
Okay, it's hard to see what the plan's going to be when we get larger but fewer encampments, and we continue to, of course, we'll continue to get complaints from residents about that. Is the money, the financial expense, is going towards cleanup or it's setting up like the issue referred to in Hamilton. I think it's setting up for that, where you have a large encampment, you have a mass, attempt to enforce these rules or clean them up, and a lot of resistance to that as well.
So I will say the model that we're looking at is something that's working very well in Oshawa. We've had a lot of conversation with the mayor of Oshawa and their staff. I'll turn it over to Mr. Oakes to comment a little bit on the staffing.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think the intent of the bylaw, and Councillor, I understand where the concern lies. This has also been informed with and developed in conjunction with staff at the region, and part of the notion of the regulatory aspect of the bylaw is to also, for those areas that will in fact have encampments, to have some level of accountability and, for the occupants to keep within a certain site, so it doesn't get expanded too far. And part of that also then helps our staff to be able to go in and clean up in and around in those situations. The intent is really, and one of the big things that we've been told, once encampments get to a certain size, they become magnets for more, and a lot of time it's not the best activities that you want to see happen. And what happens is there are the predatory scenarios where people come in and individuals come in and take advantage of those situations. And we don't want that to happen. So the notion and the idea, by keeping some level of maintenance order in these areas through setbacks and size, it gives our staff the ability to manage that. But also at the same time, it doesn't allow the sites to proliferate to the point where we're bringing in, heavy equipment. We're having to remove trees to get certain aspects out. It defines structures. You can't have permanent type structures. We've had situations where, there have been some, significant propane tanks and safety concerns that, this is all part of that regulatory aspect. And the biggest piece and the struggle that we have, and this isn't a St. Catharines issue, this is a broader, is just the access to the system and having, all of the appropriate supports in place. Individuals who are in an encampment don't have that support mechanism, whether it's through counseling or job seeking or home. And we're trying to work, and we're working very much in conjunction with the region and the outreach teams on being able to manage that. So the intent has always been, this isn't going in and just saying, you can't be here. We need to be working, and we have an agreement with the region that all of those supports are being offered, and in the certain situations on the different classified, we have class 1 and class 2 type of areas, they will inform us if individuals are in process of working with the NASO team to find housing supports and they need a bit more time. That will be obviously allowed and worked in collaboration. But the intent is over time, hopefully the system is fixed to a point where there's enough inventory and the costs, and we will no longer need, the cleanup, the amount of investment that we're having to put forward.
Yeah, I can drop this because I think we could go around and around on it. I just think if we're noting that larger encampments are worse or more dangerous or something like this, then I don't know that this helps solve that, because I think it creates at least a couple or a few large encampments. But because this bylaw, and I know it's not the intent, and the mayor mentioned this, isn't to solve the housing crisis. So nothing's going to change the amount of people who need to live rough until that is addressed. I know that this bylaw isn't doing that, so it's just about how many encampments are there going to be in the city, and this makes it sound like there's going to be a handful of large ones rather than spread out. And again, we'll see is fine to say for now, I suppose. But I did want to ask about the process of how this bylaw was created. I know the CEO touched on talking to the region. If I recall, and I can be corrected, and often am, is that the mayor issued a directive in the fall. We approved in January staff to come back with a bylaw, which is now before us tonight. I guess my question, what happened in the interim? Like, how was this bylaw? Who was consulted about its construction between January and today?
So there was collaboration with our colleagues in Guelph, Oshawa. We looked at examples from Ottawa and other policies from around the province. looking for examples of bylaws similar to this. I can tell you the catalyst for this originally was speaking to Mayor Guthrie in Guelph about their bylaw. They had instituted, I think they've seen a fair amount of success. They seem pretty happy with it. There were some areas, though, that he identified and flagged that he thought if they were doing it again, they would probably do slightly differently. Some of the setbacks weren't sufficient, so those are some of the amendments that have been made, specifically with respect to residential properties. But that was the process that I'm aware of. If there's anything that anybody wants to add, Mr. Chania?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. The legal department and other departments from the city, we all worked together. We had a number of meetings on this because we are aware that we have to balance the right of these individuals because they are, in fact, individuals. And we also had to look at our responsibility, the city's responsibility to maintain safe, accessible, inclusive public spaces. And a point I would like to make is that the intent of this bylaw is not to regulate people. I listened to the delegates tonight, if I may, through you, Mr. Mayor, and I heard enforcement with an iron fist, punishment, discrimination, criminalizing people, casting judgment. And I very respectfully have to say that I disagree with these statements because that was absolutely not the intent. The intent of this bylaw is to regulate the use of public spaces and trying to find that balance for all the people, homeless or otherwise, and try to help as opposed to hold anything back. And when we looked at, with other directors, the setbacks, we most definitely looked at what you were asking previously, what happens if, certain people cannot set up these temporary structures in one spot, they will go to another spot, and that could create an increased number of structures being put up. We even thought about that aspect of it, and we put in detail in the proposed bylaw that these structures would have to be there would have to be setbacks and spaces between these structures for that purpose. So the end result is not going to be a cluster of these structures. I don't know if I'm specifically answering your question, but a lot of work and effort went into this from all these departments. We looked at the legislation, the case law, the current pending appeal that's going on, other municipalities, their bylaws that are existing. We spoke with other legal professionals. We consulted with a number of people, and we are trying to come up with the best possible step towards the solution in our current circumstance.
And I definitely can appreciate that. I think I'm probably stepping on Councillor Dodge's toes here, but I mean, AMO even says we should be, when we're creating a public space bylaw, that we should be consulting with people with lived experience of being homeless. So I'm concerned if that didn't happen, and I'm sure the region suggests that they can offer that perspective, but it also says we should be engaging with the Indigenous community because we know that Indigenous people are disproportionately impacted by homelessness. And honestly, I'm a bit concerned that we haven't really consulted with the public in any meaningful way. Like typically when we have these bylaws, we might have open houses or things like this, or even just on the website. I don't know that I've seen that that's been the case. I know that as councillors, we weren't specifically asked for input on this. So I guess my concern is how this was constructed and maybe who was left out of the consultations around it. And again, the AMO document itself says that the goal, and again, maybe this gets into the system we're in here municipally with 2 tiers, is that the goal should be to provide a path for housing. I don't really see how this does that. We can get into our opinions on the penalties and fines and whether it's an iron fist or draconian or whatever, but I don't see how this helps anyone get in housing, really. And I get that maybe that's not the intent of it, and that's fine. But AMO wants, when we put these bylaws together, that we're keeping in mind that ultimately we're trying to get people in housing, and I don't see how, the penalties that are listed in this bylaw, including, fines and things like cost recovery for the municipality, is going to help anyone already being subjected to poverty get out of poverty. So. Okay, I have a lot of questions, so I'll try to condense. But there's a provision, and I think it's already been touched on around if there's no shelter space available, that this won't be applicable, this bylaw, which I think is good and follows that law that or the rulings or that we've mentioned. But there's two ways around it, and one is that the region has open shelter beds, which I think it's already been documented that there are some people who aren't allowed in shelters, and there are some people who choose not to go to shelters. And if anyone's ever volunteered at a shelter, they might know why, that some people prefer not to be in shelters. And I think that, again, if you've spent time in any of them, you would understand that feeling. I had someone who I spoke to recently who was living on the street who said they'd rather be in jail than in a shelter. And encampments are the worst possible solution, but that just shows you the traumatic experiences people have had with shelters. But my question is, how do we check that availability? Like, is that, it just says, someone will liaise with the region. Like, is that documented somewhere? Is that a formal process? Who's doing that?
We reach out to the region on a regular basis. My office is engaged in a weekly meeting with the region to find out how many beds are available, how many shelter spaces are available. The number is a bit of a moving target. I'll be completely honest. We struggle sometimes to understand how the region actually fills those beds. We've had situations where on a Monday call, we'll find out that there's 15 units available. We'll see no noticeable impact on any of the shelter or any of the encampments in our community. We don't see, and this is, I will say, this is a fundamental problem with the two levels of government. I've had this conversation with the Mayor of Brantford. The Mayor of Brantford is in a one-tier system, so his community service people can speak to his parks people. They can access HIFAS. They can identify where the places people can go. It's all under one roof, and it's a much more streamlined system. I've made this argument to the region. The region is unwilling to provide us with the information that we've asked for. They lean on confidentiality, which I respect that there's confidentiality, but it's been very difficult. And that goes to some of your earlier points, Councillor Miller. Like you've talked about, having a pipeline and everything else. I respect that, but we're very much not involved in that work. And so, we're dependent on the region to be able to do that. And while I applaud staff for the attempts that they make to work with the region to, when they're working through things like this bylaw, it has been a very difficult process.
So, yeah, and again, my concern would be, okay, there's an open bed, or there's a couple open beds, tonight, and that means we can remove, someone's, tent or temporary structure, whatever they have. But does that person even go and use that shelter, right? Is there follow through on that? Just because there's an empty bed doesn't mean it's going to be used by the person who's now losing their home.
But Councillor, the one thing I'm going to ask, just because I can see where you're going, my concern is, though, we're now delving into regional matters. And you're asking questions which are very much appropriate to the regional level of government and don't really, they're not related to this bylaw. And I understand, and I think your questions are poignant and they're good questions, but truthfully, they would be better suited at a regional council.
Well, I guess I don't agree, because this bylaw specifically hinges on there being shelter space available, which is provided by the region. So, it's in the bylaw that the region, that's a condition of applying this bylaw, is that there's shelter space available, right? So
agreed.
Yeah, it's maybe unclear how that process, and maybe it can't be because of the two-tier system. But my other question with that is the other way that provision around, there's no shelter space available, we're not going to apply this, except in the other situation was an immediate threat. And I'm just curious what constitutes an immediate threat isn't really illustrated here. And of course, it can't be exhaustive, but even just some idea of what an immediate threat is, and then who's making that call? Is the region making that call, or the police making, who's deciding what's an immediate threat?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So it's a bit of a collaborative effort. The immediate threat could be anything from proximity to a roadway or to a waterway, and those sorts of things. It could be specific to illegal activities that are happening in and around the facility. We are working, part of this entire, and it is a challenge in a two-tiered system when we don't have access to the information, and we have to rely on our partner, Niagara Region, and through their outreach teams on how to work it. But we do have protocols and guidelines that have been developed in conjunction, the weekly meetings, but we have daily interactions with the regional team. There's a protocol that's in place in terms of how the NASO outreach team goes and meets and does the offerings of housing supports and whatnot. And all of that is documented. And, you know, those conversations happen in every situation of, you know, an identified encampment. So there are, and we're actually working to, you know, to actually strengthen that through whether it's a memorandum of understanding or a letter of agreement between the city and the region that sort of codifies that in a document. But it is all intended, and everything that we do is done sort of in collaboration with the Niagara Region outreach team. So our staff would never go in and you know, not have, you know, the NASO or the regional team engaged and to provide us some information on those individuals.
I appreciate that. I certainly would trust our staff. I would just maybe prefer to see that codified or explicit or something, because this bylaw might be in effect in perpetuity, right? And the situations and the teams and the relationships might change. So just some sort of more explicit direction within the bylaw itself about how these things are determined and things like that might be helpful, because I think a fear in the community is that if you're not explicit, then maybe this bylaw will be abused, and maybe that's not fair to our staff and to regional staff. But I think that's a legitimate fear that people have. There's a couple more bigger questions. It mentions biohazards a lot, which, you know we don't provide enough public washrooms in the city. It's something we have acknowledged and tried and failed to address previously. So it's just, I'm not sure where we are expecting people to go to the bathroom who are living in encampments, but this would prohibit them from doing it near their encampment sites, I think. And again, it's one of those situations that nobody wants, but I'm unclear what the alternative there. Just around the fines and penalties, there's a mention of directors of corporations can be penalized under this bylaw who subvert or somehow obstruct the bylaw. Who's that referring to? Like, who's the intended?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. Excuse me. We put in that language to give us a tool in situations, and only in situations when it's necessary, where we are contemplating situations when a corporation is possibly facilitating standard contraventions in the bylaw, because a corporation can be fined, can be prosecuted, and just to have that extra layer of protection, that extra tool in our toolbox, if you will, should that happen, we would be able to react. That's why we have the corporation language in the bylaw.
Okay. My other concerns around the sort of penalties and enforcement is that, again, I'm not sure how these fines, if one of the goals should be to get people out of poverty, hopefully that's a goal we're always trying to achieve. I'm not sure how that achieves that, but even further than that, this seems to be spending a lot of money on things like, there's some provision around anyone who's committing illegal activity can't stay in an encampment and things like that. I don't know why the municipalities expending resources monitoring and penalizing activities that are already illegal and already enforced by other authorities. And I think that, let alone the sort of moral cost of finding someone who's living in poverty, or at least who is living in poverty, I just don't see the practical value of chasing down and finding and penalizing and further penalizing people when we're never going to get that money as long as the person lives in poverty. It just seems like sort of a waste of resources. So I guess my question would be to staff around the provision around illegal activity. Like, of course, I prefer people who are committing illegal activities to be being caught doing so and prosecuted by the police if they so wish. But I just don't get where we come in there. I mean, it's already illegal to do illegal activities. So why do we need to say that in this bylaw?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, when in a situation when you have a bylaw which regulates something, which essentially says that, you can go this way, you can't go that way, if you don't have a mechanism for an offense and a penalty or a potential prosecution in the bylaw, what happens is that the essential intent to regulate becomes worthless, because if somebody says, you know what, I know I'm not supposed to be going right, but there's nothing you can do about it, so I'm going to do it anyways, then the bylaw would become pointless. So again, my answer is a little bit similar to my previous answer, that even though we may not be relying on a punitive provision of a bylaw or a prosecutorial provision of the bylaw, not having that tool and not having that option to enforce the bylaw may render the bylaw useless to begin with. So these terms in a bylaw are essentially necessary to give us the tools needed to rely on the bylaw and enforce when we have to.
Okay, I guess my question would be, how motivating are financial penalties to someone who's being forced to live on the street? But, again, that can be a matter of difference of opinion. But again, this provision, I think 4.112, participate, support, assist, or be involved in any illegal activity. That's restricted. That's a general condition of being not allowed but not prosecuted, maybe under this bylaw. I'm just failing to see why we would be spending resources on that. Like, if someone's committing a legal activity, I don't think there's anyone in the city other than perhaps our lawyers who are able to determine that. But shouldn't, again, isn't this something that the police are already or should already be doing and already receive hundreds of millions of dollars to do? I'm just failing to understand, we know our financial situation, why we're committing resources to things like that. Maybe someone could touch on.
So, Councillor, I'm going to jump in for a second.
Yeah.
And this is a fun little piece of procedure that most people don't know. So there is a time limit for councillors. Section K5 says that each councillor is allowed to speak for 5 minutes on any topic. We're up past 20 now, and we're litigating individual clauses of the bylaw and asking questions related to the bylaw. I'm going to ask you to come to wrap it up, because we have.
Well, these are just questions. I mean, I have.
No, Councillor, I understand their questions.
Yeah.
I think I hear the question, the question mark at the end of each of your sentences. What I'm saying is there is a 5-minute limit, and there was an opportunity, Councillor, there was an opportunity in the lead up to this meeting to ask questions of staff, and most of your questions could have been asked of staff. So I'm going to ask you to come to a conclusion, because we are well past 20 minutes now for your speaking time.
Yeah, and again, I think that just cuts to the core of one of my main issues with this, is just how was this constructed, and it wasn't a public engagement process, and I think that's certainly the problem most people I've spoken to in the community have. But so I guess my final question then would be, what is the plan to communicate this bylaw to those who are impacted by it the most?
So I believe the motion indicates that there will be an education period starting immediately. I'll look to Mr. Oakes to discuss what that looks like.
Yeah, again, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the intent would be to, the education program would be directed through the NASO outreach teams, the region, all of the access points, social media, all of those sorts of things. But the more important, and I think where you're looking at, is the individuals who are currently experiencing, being unhoused or whatnot. It would really be intended that would go through our regional partner program.
Okay. I guess, yeah, again, obviously, from me trying to refer this, I can't support this as is. Without that engagement with those with specifically lived experience, without more public input that's not happening behind closed doors, that's happening in public, and specifically engagement with the Indigenous community as well. So I certainly understand the need to have a public spaces bylaw, and I would love to see one. I just can't support this one. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you. Obviously, going to support the bylaw and the amendments in front of us. We're not necessarily saying that we're totally going to relocate or telling a homeless person that they have to relocate to a large encampment. They just have to abide by the bylaws that are in place. We also have to look after the residents who are living in homes, or students who are going to schools or places like that, so that they're safe. Because if you have a homeless encampment or something like that that's very near a school or near a house, the parents or the residents get upset and you get into an altercation. And it has happened. I talked to a lady yesterday that there was a very ugly situation between a homeless person who may not have been at fault, but the fact the resident didn't like the fact that they were so close, they got into an argument and a physical situation ensued. So we're not, this is in a way trying to protect the homeless people from a situation they might get themselves into, and it's not their fault. But it's also giving our residents a peace of mind that their kids or their houses are going to be protected by this bylaw. So I do believe that the distances that are incorporated in this will work. This is without a doubt, Mr. Mayor, I think you'd agree, the most complex problem that we've ever had as councillors. And I know the CAO has indicated that half his day is spent trying to solve this problem. Are we going to solve the homeless problem? Not a chance, because it's not necessarily our responsibility. It's the region, it's the province, and it's the federal government. But it comes down to us, and we're trying to do the best darn job we can, and it's with a very limited budget, and it's extremely difficult. Is this going to work? Gee, I hope so, but I can't guarantee it. We're going to do the best we can to protect the homeless, to try and make their life as good as possible, and also to serve the needs of the rest of the residents in town. I don't have a question, but I just wanted to indicate that's the reason that I think we should go forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will try to be as brief as possible. I am in support, obviously I'm seconding the motion, this bylaw, because to me, as has been stated, it's about how we all share our public spaces. And we need to have our public spaces remain safe and accessible and welcoming for everyone in our community. And as we've already heard tonight, these are really difficult conversations. The decisions we're making will impact real lives, and they're not easy, and I don't know about everyone else, but they do weigh heavy on me, and I'll be totally honest, I'm conflicted by it. I do believe that the rights of individuals living in encampments need to be protected, and our number one goal must always be to help people connect with the supports they need, and ultimately to help them find stable housing that they so deserve. But at the same time, it's becoming, I can't even say increasingly difficult. It is becoming impossible, because encampments are everywhere. They're in neighborhoods, they're near schools, they're on trails, and they're on waterfronts, and all of those places are meant to be for everyone. And when you walk by an encampment, you're gonna see lots of garbage, you're gonna see human waste, you're gonna see drug paraphernalia, and the residents who are living around it, they are raising real valid concerns about their safety and their accessibility to these public spaces. And we have to find a way to balance with compassion the responsibilities and the rights and the realities. In the report, it's been mentioned that currently the city of St. Catharines accounts for half of the encampments across Niagara. And that's putting huge pressures on our staff when they're going into parks, when they're trying to clean up trails, when they're trying to clean up sidewalks and public spaces. And while the Niagara region is responsible for many of the systems needed to truly address this issue, housing, shelter, mental health supports, and addiction and treatment, it seems that it's all falling on the city and certainly us as counselors who are getting the emails and are getting the face-to-face frustration from residents who feel unsafe, unheard, and overwhelmed. The encampment cleanup and outreach, it is happening every day, but we can't be asking our city staff, our one lone staff person to be handling this. It is draining resources, and we're doing it all without any direct financial support from the region, even though the services that we need to have provided fall squarely within their mandate. And we just can't continue to absorb these impacts while the core systems that are responsible for the long-term solutions are underfunded or they're missing altogether. I believe that our regional partners and our regional councilors must step up, not just with policies, but with people, programs, and funding. I think one of the reasons that I'm supportive of this bylaw is that it is clearly defining where encampments can and cannot be. I've seen it in other municipalities that it is effective. We're setting some standards, safety standards. I think if you talk to fire, you talk to police, you talk to staff, they see the terrible things that are happening. It's giving the city some flexibility, and it is prioritizing outreach and education before encampment removal begins or cleanup begins. And I do think that this does respect the Charter of Rights of Individuals when no shelter options are available. As Councillor Phillips said, this is not going to solve homelessness. It's a Band-Aid. This is basically a set of tools to help us as a city manage the symptoms of a much deeper crisis. And unless the other levels of government really actually, who are responsible, address these issues, it's just going to continue to grow. But honestly, we have to act now. I can't get another email because I don't know what to say anymore to residents. When someone emails me or calls me or says to me, there's an encampment beside my business and that used to be one tent, now it's 20, and now I've had my copper stolen. I've had, people living in my alcove, they're scaring my staff. I don't know what to tell them anymore. This is at least some step and a movement towards it. The one thing I will say, I don't believe this is about criminalizing homelessness. I think it's about creating safe, inclusive spaces in the public, because I don't think that, I live right down the street from Montebello Park. The cage or the fencing came down, and within about 2 hours, there were people living in the pavilion. That meant that residents who use the pavilion are now no longer going to go up and use the pavilion. They're not going to be able to access it. Same with the park itself. Anyway, I think we need to do something. There's one amendment that I would like, and I hope will be friendly, is that I'd like to add that city staff work with regional staff, Niagara Regional Police, Niagara St. Catharines Fire Services, and other relevant city departments to produce a monthly public report modeled on the Hamilton's weekly encampment wrap-up report. If anyone's had a chance to look at it, it's very fulsome in in the information that it provides, and I think it would be very helpful for the city to have something like that, so residents can actually see what's being done and hopefully use the data from that is collected to lobby the region and lobby other levels of government to provide more additional, better and additional funding. Thank you. I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Councillor, can you just give us a little bit of wording so that we can get that amendment written down?
Sure. That city staff work with regional staff, Niagara Regional Police, St. Catharines Fire Services, and other relevant city departments to produce a monthly public report modeled on Hamilton's weekly encampment wrap-up report.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so on my speakers list right now, I have, up next will be Councillor Williamson, followed by Stevens, Ratzlaff, Mako, and Townsend. Councillor Williamson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to say that I'm very impressed by the discussion and what's been said by colleagues on council so far. It's been intelligent, informed, and compassionate, and I give credit to those of you who've spoken. I'm sure that others will have. I'll also add to the dialogue and care about this critical and complicated, as Deputy Mayor, Phillips has mentioned. I do agree with the presenters. This is probably not the best way to have to address the issue, but we're dealing with the end-of-line effects or downstream effects. And yeah, it involves real human tragedy. It'd be much better to be dealing with the root causes and the systemic inequalities that lead to what we have to deal with. But the harsh reality is that we're in a predicament, and it's our job to mitigate risk and try and improve public safety. And so this seems to be the best tool. Like I said, not perfect, but it's what we have to deal with in the real world. I was pleased that the mayor kind of backtracked on blaming the downloading and lack of, I guess, forward movement on the region. The region, I guess, can probably share some blame, but I think I'll stick up for our regional council colleagues. They have tried their best to work with us. I think they too are in a similar situation, getting downloaded for areas of service that really are outside our scope. And these are expensive downloads that our local taxpayers have to pay for, basically through the property tax regime. So I think most of what I was going to say has already been said. I stand in support of this because, unfortunately, it's the best choice that we have to make in this situation. And sometimes we just are left to deal with consequences, not necessarily of our making. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson, and your regional colleagues. Thank you. They really do need the defense as much as possible. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think this is a good bylaw. Staff did a lot of research and everything. We have to try something. If you don't try anything, you'll never know if it'll work. If we just leave it the status quo, we know that's not working. So this is a tool, so hopefully it will help, alleviate some of this. I'd like to echo Councillor McPherson, we also have to look at the rights and privileges of all our tax-paying citizens in the city that pay for all these parks and services and don't use them or are afraid to use them because of one individual in a park. And the reason they're not in some of these shelters is because of their violent activity. So our residents are afraid. So then there's a fear there. So, so maybe this will help out a little bit. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Yeah, maybe, hopefully we can get funding comes right from the top from our new old federal government now, and hopefully money comes and trickles down to help with different homeless shelters and things as well. So I think this is a step. We always know we can always take it away if it doesn't work, but it's a step in the right direction. We have to try something because doing the status quo isn't working. So.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Ratzlaff.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Just some comments. I'll try to keep them short because I think a lot of the stuff that I wanted to share has been said. But yeah, the housing crisis is getting worse and definitely is frustrating for folks living in encampments. It's frustrating for neighbors who live around those encampments, and it's frustrating for us who have to often, as Councillor McPherson said, we have very little solutions to offer people. And so I do agree that regulating the use of land in our parks is something that we need. I do have some concerns about this bylaw, this iteration. Just to put it in context, I operated the gardens in Centennial Park, Richard Pierpoint Park, for about 9 years, and so there was encampments in those parks the entire time. It was, I think it was a combination of things, convenience and inequality that resulted in all those encampments in that park and around 12 Mile Creek. I do feel as though similar concerns that Councillor Miller shared is that when you kind of break out a map and look at Class 1, Class 2, the radius around schools and sensitive use areas, I feel as though we're codifying that convenience. Like, I don't see very many options outside of 12 Mile Creek and Richard Pierpoint Park. You know, you talk about businesses, you talk about Queenston neighbors, Connaught School. These are all community members and the community that's been on the front line of this housing crisis for years and years and years. And thinking about passing a bylaw that I fear is going to further entrench what they're experiencing in our downtown core, in and around our downtown core. Like once this crisis got to a tipping point, people started moving out of Richard Pierpoint, started moving beyond 12 Mile Creek and into, they went north of the QEW, right? Fairview Park, and further afield. And now, because of that, I just don't see how this bylaw doesn't result in pushing people back to places that are already overcrowded with encampments. And so I guess one question that I have is like, what if that, you know, what happens? I mean, the plan that the bylaw sets out is, you know, 10 meters apart so that we don't have clustering. But there's 43 encampments currently, if they're all along the 12 Mile Creek and in our downtown core and in Richard Pierpoint Park, and they're all 10 meters apart. How are we gonna, the risks, the biohazard risks are real. Like, how are we gonna, are there any plans to deal with that? Or like, what happens if we see this, if we enact this bylaw and we just see people being pushed into more and more dense and concentrated areas because, as the bylaw sets out, those are the only areas that people can go? Are we gonna review it? Is there a review period?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely. You know, we've been progressing and evolving and adapting, you know, since you know, as long as I can remember, since 2017. So absolutely, we are very hopeful in discussions with the region and the provincial, the Heart Hub that's going to be coming online, more supports, and hoping that, you know, we won't get to that situation. If we do, then absolutely we have to address the situation.
Like, I'm not, that's helpful, thank you. I'm not a professional, so when I look at the map, like, I don't know all the minutia and the details of where people are not allowed to be. But am I wrong to suggest that 12 Mile Creek and Richard Pierpoint in our downtown core are areas where there's going to be a higher tolerance level, if I can put it that way, because we're not trying to say sanctioned, right?
So let me say there's no tolerance level, but there are going to be areas of the city where we don't have setbacks that preclude this.
Yes, right.
There will be areas along 12 Mile Creek, though, that wouldn't be eligible. They're too close to a waterway, and in some cases, some of the encampments have been sandwiched a few meters from the back fence lines of residents and a few meters from the waterway. In a situation like that, and I can think of several encampments that I run past on a daily basis, some of those would not be possible under this because they would be violating both the setback from the waterway and the setback from residential property. But some areas would not fall inside of those areas as well. So, I mean, it really depends place by place.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say at this point. I appreciate that. But, you know, as a counselor for St. Patrick's, someone who's lived and worked downtown for a long time, I just have a hard time. I'm just really concerned that the pressure is going to continually be put on residents of my ward and people I work with every day, and people who have had to, you know, train staff, have had to, you know, schools that have had to figure out how to live with people who are living rough for a long time. And that's one of my biggest struggles with the bylaw. I guess we'll see where it goes. I mean, I don't know if we can say more than that at this point. The two amendments that I would like to make is I do think that, you know, whatever we do should be housing focused, And so I would like, I mean, this may fit into McPherson's amendment, but just to have the region, no, I don't think it has to be monthly, but the region report back on whether or not, what parts of this bylaw are helping divert people, and what parts, if any, are creating barriers to diversion.
Well, I mean, you can ask to make an amendment, but I don't think it's appropriate for us to be asking other levels of government to comment on the quality of our bylaw.
Well, I mean, it depends on how you're evaluating the quality of the bylaw. I mean, I'm asking the region to ask, like, we're supposed to be cooperating with them on this bylaw, right? And so,
I mean, I'll say it again. We've asked the region with respect to how this bylaw interacts with some of the things that they're doing, but this bylaw is about regulating our public spaces. And the region has been very clear, Councillor, and I was copied on an email that you received last week. The region has been very clear in those emails that this is absolutely our purview and they have nothing to do with it.
yeah,
And
I mean,
you've read that email as well.
No. Maybe I'm asking the question wrong. I guess I want us to be sure that what we do doesn't negatively affect someone finding housing.
So to that point, that's a fair comment, and I think that's something, given that we have the downtown community safety and well-being table, I think we can ask the staff that are at those meetings that you're at, along with Councilor McPherson, myself, the CAO, and members of his office, and regional staff, and specifically the regional staff that we deal with on this file, we can ask them to provide us with updates.
Like, there's going to be a lot of learning, right, as we go. I'm on the region side and our side, and I just want to be reassured that what we do is helping people find housing and not creating more barriers.
I don't think it's the goal of anybody, including the staff who built the bylaw. The intention is always that anything that we do is supportive of the people in our community, both those who are unsheltered and the people living in the broader community. And if at any point we were given the impression that this bylaw was hampering the ability of unsheltered individuals to find housing, obviously we'd bring it back, but we would do that with any bylaw.
Yeah, fair enough. And then the other amendment, and this may not be friendly, is just, actually, before I ask for this last minute amendment, I just want to ask a question for clarity from the solicitor, city solicitor, just around if you can maybe better speak to the relationship between a penalty and a bylaw and being able to enforce the bylaw. You made some comments about that earlier, and I just am unclear exactly how that works. I kind of understand it, but if you can just help clarify that'd be helpful.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. Excuse me. When we have a bylaw in place, we can enforce the bylaw by ensuring that the regulations within the bylaw are followed. So everybody's in compliance with the bylaw. That's part A. Mm-hmm. And part B, if somebody is not in compliance with the bylaw, i.e. infringes the bylaw, we would have the opportunity or the tool to prosecute in one way or another. Those are two different things. So the reason we put those provisions within the bylaw, so we can enforce the bylaw, A, and should we find ourselves in the position when prosecution is warranted, then we would have the tool or the opportunity to prosecute as well, whoever that may be. And I'm not saying that vulnerable individuals or homeless people would be prosecuted, but that we have to have the tool within our toolbox.
Is the only, is financial penalties the only tool, the only thing that you can't prosecute, or just removing the encampment itself enough?
In certain cases, removing is enough, and in certain cases that warrants further action, we will consider it. I'm not saying that people will be prosecuted or people will be dragged to court or financial penalties in every single case. That is something that is considered every single time an infraction of any bylaw happens. And with the help of our enforcement team and other departments, we come up with a strategic plan on how we can achieve compliance and deterrence. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to request the motion or the amendment that we remove financial penalties from the bylaw.
Okay, so is that a friendly amendment to the mover? No? Okay, so then we're going to deal just with the amendment of this time. The amendment would be to remove all financial penalties from the bylaw. Is there any discussion on this? All right, seeing none, then who's the seconder for your amendment? Councillor Miller? Okay, so I am going to clear my queue. Councillors, I will add you back to the queue momentarily. I'm going to turn the current councillor off, and I will look to the clerk to call the roll on this amendment.
Councillor Ratzlaff?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
No.
Councillor Townsend?
No.
Councillor Dodge?
No.
Councillor Harris?
No.
Councillor Lindo?
Yes.
Councillor Mako?
No.
Councillor McPherson?
No.
Councillor Phillips?
No.
Councillor Stevens?
No.
Mayor Cisco?
No.
That's lost.
Okay, so Councillor Ratzlaff, did you have anything more to add? Can I just ask that Councillor Ratzlaff's mic be opened? Oh, I could have done it.
Yeah, no. Yeah, just parting comment. I'm going to really struggle to support this bylaw only because of the fear that I have that an already kettling downtown in Richard Pierpoint Park, this is just going to put more pressure in those areas. And those areas are places that we can't afford that. So thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mako, do you want to hit your button just so that I have you in the queue? Councillor Harris, do you want to hit yours? So at this time, I have 3 speakers left. Councillor Mako, followed by Councillor Townsend, and then Councillor Harris. Councillor Mako?
Thank you. Mayor, through you, I think I got to get a bit faster on my button pushing skills because a lot of the great questions have already been asked. I did want to just echo and support Councillor Miller's point about public engagement and community consultation. I don't think that has to be a one and done. I would like to see some community consultation done throughout the implementation phase as well. I think engaging the Indigenous community was one great suggestion, but I think just keeping that process going throughout is important. My question, I think, was around evaluation and just the success metrics and how we're going to measure success of this if staff have put some thought into an evaluation plan. I did really like Councillor McPherson's point about the review process and having a reporting mechanism to come back. I'm not sure if we want to decide on a frequency, how often we would like to get those reports back, but just having sort of a continuous quality improvement approach to this process if it gets supported tonight. So how are we measuring success and what would be the frequency of those reports back?
So I will just jump in and point out, under the drafting of the enforcement business case, one of the items is tracking and measuring the outcomes to ensure intention of the bylaw is being satisfied. So that'll come forward to us when that business case.
Okay.
Staff recognize that that's a part of this. The business case with this motion would be expedited, so we would get that. Mr. Oakes, any guesses as to when that business case with those tracking mechanisms would be?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You stole my thunder. The intent was to bring it in the business case, and we've been tentatively targeting the May 26th meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just start off quickly. I want to welcome Councillor Mako to council. Would have been nice to be there tonight, but looking forward to having him aboard, and sounds like he's already starting with some great questions and suggestions. In regards to the staff, this bylaw, I'm in favor of it. I know Councillor Stevens and I have received a lot of calls as of late with people setting up camp in some of the local parks in St. George's Ward, and I think it's important. Yes, we know the region and the province has to continue to step up, but I feel this gives our staff the tools needed to enter and to feel safe about doing so. I think one thing that one thing we should keep in mind is I haven't heard of, I don't get regular calls in my 6 years on council of, our bylaw staff being, awful or cruel to people who receive fines. So I will say, it could be that CAO Oakes runs a tight ship, but I'll just say that I will be in support of this, and I look forward to it coming back in May. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Harris.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to maybe the CAO, how would this apply to certain parks, perhaps in St. Andrews Ward, like Burgoyne Woods. How would it apply to also Ministry of Transportation property along railroad corridors, the 12 Mile Creek, all those different areas?
Through Mr. Mayor, so this applies only to municipally owned, so city-owned parcels. So anything in the MTO corridor has to be managed by the province. Anything in the hydro corridor would be Hydro 1.
However, I will say railroad infrastructure is captured within this, so within 30 meters of railway or railroad infrastructure, so that would be captured within the.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, along the 12 Mile Creek, do we not have a agreement with OPG that so it would be captured?
Yes. Yes, under we have a license agreement with OPG, so that we are the operator of that parcel, so that is licensed land, which is city.
Okay. And can you explain what the process is when there's encampments along the 406? Because I get a lot of calls from when people are exiting on Geneva there off the 406. There seems to be quite a few encampments.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so I can't speak specifically on how NASO deals with the outreach worker. I'm assuming they're dealing no different than how they are on public space, but that is MTO property, so that then gets transited to the Ministry of Transportation. They have contracted services to deal with the situation.
So just so I'm clear, we contact the region, or can we not just contact the Ministry of Transportation directly and get something done?
Through you, we do both. So our staff would contact if we're made aware, as well as the region. So anytime something came in and we know it's on MTO lands, we would immediately inform the ministry.
Okay, my next question through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CAO. So when a resident of St. Catharines calls us, who should we direct it to? To your office, so you guys can contact the MTO?
So there's several options. 211 is where we refer. If they come in, 211 would contact the MTO, or they can call Citizens First. And Citizens First will relay those back to the MTO.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lindell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions for clarification. Richard Pierpoint Park has come up a couple of times, and there are already a number of encampments in there. I'm just wondering, I know that the bylaw states that they have to be a certain distance apart from each other to help maybe alleviate how many tents and encampments there are. Do we have the staff to regulate that? Because there's going to be a ton of tents in that area. And I'm just wondering, is it going to be incumbent on only staff, or will the public be able to call in and say, hey, I think these encampments are just too close to each other at this point?
So a part of the report speaks to the fact that there will be hiring that needs to be done. We're, again, modeling it to a certain extent off of what Oshawa has done. So it would be incumbent on the bylaw enforcement staff. Obviously, residents are going to continue to send through information to their councillors about situations that they're concerned about. And so in those situations, council can pass those on to staff, and they'll be dealt with through the appropriate channels through City Hall.
Will that also be part of the Citizens First, where they go online and report bylaw infractions?
I would assume it would be a similar process.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I would assume that's the process that we would, but that will be flushed out in the business case.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. All right. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? You know, Councillor Miller, you spoke for a long time. I'm going to give you a little bit of leeway if you have something brief.
I think I asked questions for a long time, but that's okay.
Councillor, you definitely asked questions. There's no disagreement, but there is still a limit. Anyways, but I assume it's something relatively brief.
Yeah, I had submitted several amendments, and in our debate about what were questions and what were statements, I forgot to mention that they were along the lines of what I was speaking to. There's really only one that I think is important, and I think Shandor's helped me wordsmith it a bit today. And it's come up in different ways, and I think Councillor Mako sort of reminded me of having an annual review specifically in the bylaw, and one that includes consultation. Again, for me, that's just a bit of a bugaboo I have right now, so I'd like to see that on an ongoing basis and codified in the way that that legal did a better job of me of saying.
Okay, because his name has been invoked, can we just look to the director?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the councillor, he did submit a number of proposed amendments, of which the annual review, I drafted up the language with the help of other lawyers today. And this is what we have come up with. And I believe that this would achieve the intended purpose that the councillor is looking for.
And from the legal perspective, this is a reasonable request?
I respectfully submit that this is reasonable, yes.
Okay, so is this a friendly amendment? Friendly? All right, so that's a friendly amendment. All right, seeing no other questions or comments, very briefly, I will just say, I appreciate the debate. I do believe everybody asked some good questions, put forward some very valid viewpoints. The one thing I wanted to point out, this is an issue, and I mentioned at the beginning, that has touched the entire city. We get emails from every single ward. Every single ward reaches out on a regular basis to my office, to the CAO's office, to Tricia's email address, which I assume just gets inundated as she is the council liaison and hears from everybody. We hear about the Terry Fox Trail. We hear about Haynes Avenue. We hear about Lakeside Park. We hear about Lynn Lake Park. We hear about 12 Mile Creek. We get those emails from everybody. This is a tool that will allow staff to hopefully effectively deal with the emails that we get and the requests that we get, and will allow council to be able to go back to residents and say, listen, we're hearing you. We recognize when you're putting forth, concerns about what could be potentially dangerous situations, and we're dealing with it with the tools that we have at our capacity. So I sincerely hope we can get as many councillors as possible to support this, and I will look to the clerk to call the roll.
So the motion on the floor will also includes the amendments to the report as well as the amendments contained in the bylaw. Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
No.
Councillor Ratzlaff?
No.
Councillor Stevens?
Yes.
Councillor Townsend?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Councillor Lindell?
Yes.
Councillor Mako?
Yes.
And Mayor Cisco.
Yes.
And that's carried.
Moving on to item 9.1, Engineering Facilities and Environmental Services, Engineering and Construction, P23102 Rainbow Drive, Dundalk Court, Regent Drive, Adel Drive, and Donalda Court, Watermain Replacements, Award of Tender and Budget Reallocation. Can I get a mover and a seconder for this? Whose ward is this?
I'll move it.
All right, so I'll give it to Councillor Townsend because he's the voice from the sky. I'll give it to Councillor Phillips as the seconder. Any questions or comments with respect to this one? Pretty straightforward.
Yes, can I just jump in, Mayor, if you don't mind?
Oh, Councillor Townsend, yep.
I want to thank staff for this. This has been, as Director Martuccio knows, I've been on his team, pushing them to get the work done in this area since 2022. So I know I certainly appreciate it. The residents in the neighborhood appreciate it, and I'm happy to see this move forward. So just again, to echo my appreciation of staff on this. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor. And I will look to the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor Townsend?
Yes.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Mako?
Yes.
Councillor Lindell?
Yes.
Councillor Kushner?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff?
Yes.
Councillor Stevens?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
Mayor Cisco?
Yes.
And that's carried.
Wonderful. All right, we move on now. Item 6.5 was pulled from consent. I'm going to ask the Deputy Mayor to come up and take the lectern as I have declared a conflict on the conversation speaking point. Well, I'm going to let Councillor Phillips take the chair.
Councillor Harris, would you like to say something?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, to the Director of Planning, or whoever wants to answer it. A few weeks ago, Councillor Kushner and I were putting a motion forward regarding a piece of property in St. Catharines that was looking to change some employment land use. And I think it wasn't conveyed really that well during the meeting, but what they were looking for is finding out a way of getting some relief for the number of jobs per hectare and that kind of stuff. And out of that meeting, we had some sort of discussion, and I guess this is what came back, but I think what we were looking for is a little bit more precise timelines. I think, I don't have it right in front of me, but I think it's 2026 that it would be coming back. And I think what we were attempting to do was find a method for it to come through council a little bit quicker and perhaps engage the people that were interested in doing some different things with their land and perhaps looking at different opportunities for employment land conversion in St. Catharines. So I'm just wondering what the timeline is here and if this is the best we got, or do we have to come back with something else to council?
Director Kate?
Thank you. Through the chair to the councillor. So on page 7 of the report is where we've started talking about what the scope of the official plan review is. And we have included council's motion from March 31st, which reads as follows: that council directs staff at the time of the next official plan review to evaluate provincial employment targets and policies to determine if any employment land conversion and/or target surpluses exist that can increase residential development opportunities in the city. So that does form our scope, part of our scope for the official plan review. The time frame, as suggested because that exercise does involve looking at designations and our growth targets citywide, it will take us some time to do. That being said, absolutely, we will be consulting with the landowners. We have had multiple meetings with them in the past and continue to invite those opportunities. Of course, at any time, should they wish to act outside of this process, they're more than welcome to apply for their own official plan amendment.
Councillor?
Deputy Mayor, to the Director of Planning. So the next step would be if, because this doesn't really reflect what Councillor Kushner and I were looking for, is to perhaps suggest to the person that, or the group that's interested, to facilitate a meeting with the city and get further direction.
Through the chair to the councillor, we're happy to meet with the landowners or their representatives at any time.
Okay, I guess my next question through you, Deputy Mayor, to the Director of Planning. How long would that process typically take if they decide to go outside of this and get their own amendment?
Through the chair to the councillor, under the Planning Act, a standalone official plan amendment must be delivered to council within 90 days. Okay. That being said, for the application to be complete, the applicants would have to undertake the same, if not more detailed work than we are doing as a staff team. So it depends on if council's directing staff to undertake this work on their behalf, or if they're undertaking the work at their own expense to apply for their own application. But once that application is complete, then it would be 90 days before it's in front of council.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. With that official plan review and the Ontario Street Corridor secondary plan update, you indicated 2026. Would that be Q1 of 2026?
To the chair, the project work plan that's included in the staff report is targeting July 2026.
July? Okay, I missed that, sorry. Be nice if you could hurry that up, though. Councillor Kushner.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. The purpose of our request was to try and expedite the development in West St. Catharines. They're ready to develop the properties for housing, and Ontario Street, I don't think, are ready yet. So the question that we are proceeding with was, can we separate that as an individual amendment? And the Director of Planning has responded to that, but because they're ready to develop the land now for housing, and it's much needed housing, the question is there anything we can do to expedite it? And is the answer for our staff to meet with them to try and expedite the matter?
Director Cathay?
Through the chair to the councillor, the applicants have had 5 years to begin an application on this site, and they have not yet done so. If they feel that they can advance this quicker than July 2026, they're more than welcome to apply for their own official plan amendment. Staff have met with them multiple times in the past to talk about scoping the exercise to help expedite it, and we can continue to have those conversations and support that work. We've also been communicating with the property owner's agent that once council endorses the work plan, that we will be working with them as a key stakeholder in this process.
Okay. I find it somewhat
Councillor?
interesting that they've had 5 years to do this and they have not done it.
Through the chair to the councillor, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Given what was discussed, I would suggest that the councillors contact the developers and through our planning department have that meeting, and I would strongly suggest that the two councillors be present at that meeting too. Thank you. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Harris? Council endorse a review and update of the Garden City Plan and initiation of the process under Section 26 of the Planning Act. Oh, Councillor Mako, yes? You gonna? Okay, Councillor Mako is seconding it. Thank you. All in favor? Pardon? Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor. Did you have a question?
Just a yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I missed you.
That's all right.
You're
I'm
blocked by
forgettable.
that.
I'm blocked
Somewhat
by
blocked by
everything.
that screen. Go ahead. My apologies.
I guess I'm just looking for a little bit of clarification from Councillor Harris with regard, and I guess Councillor Kushner. I know. With the suggestion, and I mean maybe I'm jumping around a bit, but is one of your goals to impact the status of the Ontario Street GM lands? No. Okay. That's all I needed to know.
I think that was a resounding no from the
appreciate it.
from
Thank
the
you.
A team. Yes, thank you. And we'll call for recorded vote, please.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Councillor Mako?
Yes.
Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Kushner?
Yes.
Councillor Lindell?
Yes.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff?
Yes.
Councillor Stevens?
Yes.
Councillor Townsend? Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Phillips?
Yes,
And that's carried.
thank you.
All right, moving on to item 10, which is the motions, and we have a couple of motions this evening. 3, in fact. The first one is 10.1, a new commemorative plaque in Montebello Park honoring the Rose Garden and W.B. Burgoyne. Moving the motion, I have Councillor McPherson. Seconding the motion, I have Councillor Ratzlaff. Councillor McPherson, do you wish to speak to the motion? Self-explanatory. All right, are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, I will look to the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor McPherson?
Yes.
Counselor Ratzlaff?
Yes.
Counselor Stevens?
Yes.
Counselor Townsend? Counselor Williamson?
Yes.
Counselor Phillips?
Yes.
Counselor Miller?
Yes.
Counselor Mako?
Yes.
Counselor Lindell? Yes. Counselor Kushner?
Yes.
Counselor Harris?
Yes.
Counselor Dodge?
Yes.
Mayor Cisco?
Yes.
That's carried.
Second motion that we have is a motion for Councillor Robin McPherson to serve on the Federation of Canadian Municipalities committees and attend committee-informed meetings. Moving the motion, I have Councillor Phillips. Seconding the motion, I have Councillor Dodge. Councillor Phillips, did you need to speak to this one?
No.
All right. Wonderful. Any speakers or comments? Seeing none, I'll look to the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Phillips?
Yes.
Counselor Dodge?
Yes.
Counselor Kushner?
Yes.
Counselor Harris?
Yes.
Counselor Mako?
Yes.
Counselor Lindell?
Yes.
Counselor McPherson?
Yes.
Counselor Miller?
Yes.
Counselor Ratzlaff?
Yes.
Counselor Stevens?
Yes.
Counselor Williamson?
Yes.
Mayor Cisco?
Yes.
That's carried.
And finally, we have item 10.3, which is the Council Community and Priority Fund. Moving this motion, I have Councillor Phillips. Seconding the motion, I have Councillor McPherson. And Councillor Phillips, do you wish to speak to this one?
Yes, briefly. As council is aware, each councillor is given a certain amount of money each year to give out to local organizations to help them fund whatever they might be presenting to their residents. It doesn't necessarily have to be in our own ward. It could be, I could be donating or suggesting that I donate money to Councillor Mako's ward or whatever. But it came to my surprise, I guess, that when I was going to give some money to the Port Weller Residents Association for their annual picnic carnival, I gave them some money last year, but the policy indicates that you can only give it 1 year and not to the next year if it's for the same event, which I'm not sure what that reason would be. So I'm suggesting that that clause be waived so that in our wards, different groups can come to us whenever they have an event to help them fund the event. Granted, it could be for recreation, it could be for the environment, it could be for health, it could be for anything. If we just went with, sorry, I gave it to you last year, I can't give it to you this year, I don't have that many groups, and I would never be able to spend all of that money. And I didn't spend all the money last year as it was. So I'm suggesting that we are allowed to fund, whether it be picnics, tree plantings, or whatever, on a continual basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Stevens.
Mr. Mayor, yeah, to go along with Councillor Phillips was saying, I know the purpose of it was that we don't, that we don't ongoing fund it, but I was under the assumption that if I bought their food this year, I could pay for their drinks next year because it's different. It's the same party, but it's through a different thing.
No. No. I appreciate the fact that you thought you found a loophole, but no, that's not how it would work as the policy is currently written. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I will just briefly, because Councillor Phillips asked the question, and the reason behind the original restriction was simply to ensure that groups had the opportunity and that individual groups did not receive funding year after year and start to see it as an entitlement, as a locked in, I always get this money, because you do have changeover from council term to council term, and we run the risk if groups are getting the same money every year, if they believe that it becomes their allocated money, that when a new councillor comes in, if they have different priorities, if they're reached out to by different groups, and they try to pull the funding back, there would then be pressure on that future council to say, okay, well, we have to grandfather these folks in, and then they get a funding stream that is maybe not necessarily recognizable. If council is comfortable that we're not going to fall into that issue, then it becomes a non-issue and councilors can make the change. Ultimately, it's up to council how they want this policy to work. I see that Councillor Kushner has a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Does it make sense to have a limit on the number of years?
I would leave that up to council. If council wants to pull this back but make a determination on a limit, they could do that. I don't know if that would necessarily be a friendly amendment though, because so I'm seeing that that's not a friendly amendment on this one.
I'll pass.
Okay. So we do have the motion on the floor, and I will look to the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor Phillips. Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Stevens.
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Mako.
Yes.
Councillor Lindell.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Mayor Cisco.
I helped write the original policy, so no.
That's carried.
All right, moving on to number 11, motions of City Council as a shareholder for the St. Catharines Municipal Development Corporation. This is the appointment to the director, appointment of the director to the board. Moving it is Councillor Miller, seconding it is Councillor Harris. Are there any questions or comments with respect to the motion? Seeing none, I'll look to the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Stevens.
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Mako.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner. Councillor Lindell.
Yes.
Mayor Cisco.
Yes.
That's carried.
All right, we have calls for notice of motion. Are there any calls for notice of motion? Seeing none. Are there any report requests? I know that Councillor Lindell has a report request. Councillor?
Yes, that staff report on construction management measures to be undertaken by builders to minimize impacts on neighborhoods. Proactive construction management minimizes disruption to surrounding communities and supports the city's objectives for responsible development. It's to help developers be better community partners when they're building.
Okay. Are there any other, do we have a seconder for that one? Councillor Harris. Are there any other report requests? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the committee and task force minutes? Councillor Harris, Councillor Mako. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. So now the reasons for going in camera. Clerk?
A motion to go into closed session for planning and building services, settlement of appeals of the Ontario Land Tribunal, official plan and zoning bylaw amendments for 12 to 16 Locke Street and 12 Lakeport Road, Port Dalhousie Commercial Core and Harbor Area Secondary Plan, and Port Dalhousie Commercial Core and Harbor Area Heritage Conservation District Plan. Closed session pursuant to Municipal Act Section 239(2)E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and F, advice is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose.
Can I have a mover and seconder to go in camera? Councillor Phillips, Councillor McPherson. All those in favor? Opposed? Away we go. Welcome back. Motion arising from the closed session. I have Councillor Mako making the motion. I have Councillor Miller seconding the motion that staff proceed as directed in closed session. I will look to the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor Mako.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Stevens.
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner. Councillor Harris. Councillor Lindell.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Mayor Cisco.
Yes.
That's carried.
All right, the bylaws. Can I have a councillor to move the motion for the bylaws this evening? We are pulling bylaw C because it was referred. So who do I have for mover? Sorry. Councillor Kushner, Councillor Phillips. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Additional bylaw. Can I have a mover and seconder for additional bylaw? Councillor McPherson. Councillor Mako. All those in favor? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Adjournment. Councillor Kushner, did you want to move the adjournment to this evening? Councillor Kushner, and then I'll let Councillor Mako be the seconder for that. All those in favor? Opposed? Good night.